Scattered across the ancient world are discoveries that seem to belong to a different chapter of history. Massive stone complexes, vanished cities, and artifacts whose origins remain uncertain. They stand as silent witnesses to knowledge we may no longer understand. How were these remarkable achievements possible, and what secrets were lost with the civilizations that created them? For centuries, these questions have endured. So sit back, relax, and let's dive into these unexplained archaeological mysteries. On the southern coast of the island of Santorini, beneath layers of volcanic ash hardened by time, lie the remarkable ruins of Thera. The landscape is striking even today. Dark cliffs rise above the sea, shaped by one of the most powerful natural events in human history. Winds sweep across the island's rugged terrain, carrying with them a sense of silence that feels almost ancient. Hidden beneath this dramatic setting is a city frozen in a single moment, a place where daily life came to an abrupt and mysterious end. Known today as Akrotiri, the settlement was once a thriving center of the Bronze Age world. Long before the rise of many of the civilizations more familiar to us, the people of Thera built multi-story buildings, created sophisticated drainage systems, and decorated their walls with vibrant frescoes depicting ships, landscapes, animals, and ceremonies. Their society appears to have been prosperous, connected by trade routes stretching across the eastern Mediterranean. Walking through the excavated streets today, one can still see traces of that vanished world. Stone staircases lead to upper floors that no longer exist. Storage jars remain where they were placed thousands of years ago. Rooms seem almost ready to receive their occupants once again. Yet something is missing. Unlike other ancient cities destroyed by sudden disasters, archaeologists have found remarkably few human remains at Thera. This absence has become one of the site's most intriguing mysteries. Evidence suggests that earthquakes may have struck before the final catastrophe, damaging buildings and warning residents of greater danger to come. Did the inhabitants recognize the signs and evacuate the island in time? Did ships carry thousands of people away from the approaching disaster? If so, where did they go? The prevailing explanation centers on the massive volcanic eruption that occurred around the middle of the 2nd millennium BC. The eruption buried the settlement beneath thick layers of ash, preserving it in extraordinary detail. Scientists believe the event generated powerful tsunamis and spread ash across vast distances. Such a catastrophe would have transformed the region and disrupted societies far beyond the island itself. For many researchers, the destruction of Thera stands as one of the defining natural disasters of the ancient world. But as with many ancient mysteries, the story does not end there. Some scholars have wondered whether memories of this catastrophe survived in oral traditions for generations. Could stories of a prosperous island civilization destroyed by a sudden cataclysm have inspired later legends? The comparison most often raised is the tale of Atlantis described by the Greek philosopher Plato centuries later. According to that account, an advanced island society vanished beneath the sea after a dramatic disaster. Most historians view the connection cautiously. Plato's story was written long after the eruption and may have served philosophical purposes rather than historical ones. Yet the similarities continue to capture the imagination. An island civilization, great wealth, sudden destruction. The parallels are difficult to ignore entirely. Other theories venture even further into speculation. Some suggest that Thera may have played a larger role in shaping regional myths than currently understood. Others wonder whether undiscovered settlements connected to the island remain hidden beneath the sea, waiting to reveal new chapters of the story. The challenge is that every answer seems to generate new questions. How extensive was the influence of this civilization before the eruption? How many people escaped? What became of the survivors? Did they merge into neighboring cultures, carrying with them memories of the disaster that eventually evolved into legend? The ruins themselves offer only fragments of the truth. Their streets remain silent. Their buildings preserve moments of ordinary life, but not the voices of the people who lived there. Thousands of years later, Thera continues to stand between history and mystery, a place where evidence illuminates much, yet leaves just enough hidden in the shadows to keep us wondering what secrets may still lie buried beneath the volcanic ash. While the volcanic ash of Thera preserved a civilization at the moment of its destruction, other ancient sites present a very different challenge. Instead of a city frozen in time, they offer a landscape shaped by centuries of ritual, memory, and mystery. Deep in the Egyptian desert, far from the bustling cities that would later define the pharaoh's kingdom, lies one such place, a vast necropolis known as el-Qa'ab. The name translates roughly as Mother of Pots, a reference to the countless fragments of ancient vessels scattered across the site. At first glance, the landscape appears almost barren. The desert stretches endlessly beneath the sun, its silence broken only by the wind moving across the sand. Yet beneath this seemingly empty terrain lie some of the earliest royal tombs in Egyptian history. Located near Abydos, el-Qa'ab served as the burial ground of Egypt's earliest kings during the First and Second dynasties, more than 5,000 years ago. Long before the construction of the Great Pyramids, before the colossal temples along the Nile, the rulers of a newly unified kingdom were laid to rest here. Their tombs, built from mud brick and timber, may seem modest compared to later monuments, but their significance is difficult to overstate. This was the birthplace of royal burial traditions that would influence Egyptian civilization for thousands of years. Archaeologists have uncovered the tombs of some of Egypt's earliest known rulers, including kings whose names survive only through fragments of inscriptions and ancient records. Within these tombs, researchers discovered pottery, jewelry, ceremonial objects, and evidence of elaborate funerary practices. These findings help illuminate a period of history that remains partly hidden behind the veil of time. Yet for all that has been discovered, el-Qa'ab continues to raise questions that are not easily answered. One of the most striking mysteries concerns the tomb believed to belong to King Jer, a ruler of the First Dynasty. Centuries after his death, Egyptians began identifying this burial place with Osiris, the powerful god associated with the afterlife, resurrection, and rebirth. Pilgrims traveled from across Egypt to visit the site. Offerings were left in enormous quantities. Religious ceremonies transformed the ancient tomb into one of the most sacred locations in the Egyptian world. But why this tomb? What caused generations of Egyptians to associate a long-dead king with one of their most important deities? Was it simply the result of evolving religious traditions, or did memories survive from an era so distant that their original meaning was eventually forgotten? The transition remains difficult to fully explain. Historical records provide clues, but not complete answers. Somewhere between history and mythology, a royal burial became a sacred destination tied to divine power. The mystery deepens when examining the extraordinary sacrifices associated with several of the early royal tombs. Surrounding some of the king's burials are dozens, and in certain cases, hundreds, of subsidiary graves. Archaeological evidence suggests that servants, officials, and attendants may have been buried alongside the ruler, perhaps to accompany them into the next world. This practice appears to have largely disappeared in later Egyptian history. Why did it emerge so prominently during these early dynasties? What beliefs inspired such actions? Were these individuals willing participants in a sacred ritual, or were other forces at work? The archaeological evidence provides important information, yet the human stories behind these graves remain silent. Standing among these burials today, one is confronted not only with physical remains, but with the mindset of a civilization still defining its understanding of kingship, death, and eternity. Some researchers suggest that the early rulers of Egypt may have been viewed in ways fundamentally different from later pharaohs. During this formative period, the king's connection to divine forces may have been especially direct, perhaps even more sacred than in subsequent centuries. Such theories attempt to explain the scale of devotion seen within the necropolis. Others wonder whether el-Qa'ab preserves traces of religious beliefs that predate the unified Egyptian state itself. Could some rituals performed here have originated among much older cultures that inhabited the Nile Valley before recorded history? If so, how much of that ancient worldview survived beneath the surface of Egyptian religion? The site also contains enigmatic inscriptions and symbols whose meanings are still debated. Early writing systems were developing during this era, and some markings remain difficult to interpret with certainty. Every fragment recovered from the desert contributes another piece to the puzzle, yet the full picture remains incomplete. As with many ancient mysteries, gaps in the evidence have encouraged more speculative interpretations. Some fringe researchers have proposed that el-Qa'ab preserves forgotten knowledge from a civilization older than dynastic Egypt itself. Others suggest that myths surrounding Osiris may contain distant memories of real historical events whose details have been transformed over thousands of years of storytelling. A few theories even argue that the site's religious significance points to traditions whose origins extend far deeper into prehistory than conventional timelines currently suggest. Mainstream archaeology generally approaches such ideas with caution, emphasizing the available evidence while acknowledging the many uncertainties that remain. Yet the existence of these theories reflects a broader truth about el-Qa'ab. Despite more than a century of excavation and study, the site continues to resist simple explanations. Even the desert itself seems determined to protect its secrets. Shifting sands have concealed structures for centuries. New discoveries occasionally emerge from areas once thought fully explored. Every excavation reveals additional details about the earliest chapters of Egyptian civilization, while simultaneously uncovering new questions. What conversations took place during the funerals of these ancient kings? What beliefs inspired thousands of pilgrims to journey here long after the rulers themselves had vanished into history? Why did one particular tomb become linked to the lord of the underworld? And how much of the original story has been lost between the age of the first pharaohs and the present day? As the sun sets over the desert and shadows lengthen across the ancient necropolis, el-Qa'ab remains suspended between archaeology and legend. It is a place where kings became myths, where tombs became sacred destinations, and where fragments of humanity's distant past continue to whisper from beneath the sand. The answers may be buried somewhere within the site itself, or perhaps they disappeared long ago, leaving only traces behind for future generations to search for and wonder about. While the sands of el-Qa'ab preserve the echoes of ancient kings and forgotten rituals, other mysteries lie far from the great river valleys of the ancient world. Across one of the most isolated regions on Earth, surrounded by thousands of miles of open ocean, another sacred landscape waits in silence. Here, on a windswept volcanic island in the southeastern Pacific, a small ceremonial village stands on the edge of towering cliffs, overlooking the endless sea. This is Orongo, a place where history, belief, and mystery converge in ways that continue to fascinate researchers today. Perched high above the crashing waves of Rapa Nui, often known as Easter Island, Orongo occupies one of the most dramatic settings in the archaeological world. The village sits along the rim of the extinct volcano Rano Kau. From its stone structures, visitors can gaze across steep cliffs that plunge into the ocean below. Offshore rise several rocky islets, dark silhouettes against the horizon. The landscape feels almost otherworldly, shaped by volcanic forces and surrounded by vast distances that separate the island from the nearest continents. The isolation alone raises questions. How did a society develop and flourish in such a remote place? How did its people maintain complex religious traditions and construct monumental works of stone so far from the centers of ancient civilization? Orongo itself consists of dozens of low stone buildings carefully constructed from slabs of volcanic rock. Many of these structures were not ordinary homes, but ceremonial spaces connected to one of the island's most important religious traditions, the Birdman cult. By the time European visitors first arrived in the 18th century, the culture of Rapa Nui had already undergone significant changes. The era associated with the creation of the famous Moai statues appeared to have largely passed. In its place emerged a religious system centered around competition, ritual, and sacred authority. Each year, according to historical accounts and oral traditions, representatives of competing groups gathered at Orongo to participate in a dangerous contest. Their objective was to obtain the first egg of the sooty tern, a seabird that nested on the offshore islets. Competitors or their chosen champions descended the cliffs, swam through shark-filled waters, and searched for the prized egg. The victor's sponsor would gain the title of Birdman, receiving prestige and religious significance for the coming year. The ceremony was remarkable, but its deeper meaning remains difficult to fully reconstruct. What beliefs motivated participants to risk their lives in such a perilous undertaking? Was the contest primarily political, religious, or symbolic? And how much of the original tradition has been lost through centuries of change? The stone walls of Orongo offer tantalizing clues. Carved into rocks throughout the site are numerous petroglyphs depicting birds, human figures, and a mysterious hybrid image combining human and avian characteristics. This figure, often associated with the Birdman deity Megaliths, appears repeatedly across the ceremonial village. The carvings suggest a rich symbolic world, yet many details remain uncertain. Researchers have spent decades studying these images, attempting to understand their meanings within the broader framework of Polynesian culture. Some interpretations emphasize fertility, seasonal cycles, and sacred leadership. Others focus on connections between the natural world and spiritual authority. Yet many questions remain unanswered. Among the island's greatest mysteries is the relationship between Orongo and the famous Moai statues scattered across Rapa Nui. Conventional scholarship generally views the Birdman tradition as a later development that emerged after the decline of large-scale statue construction. Environmental pressures, social transformations, and shifting religious beliefs may have encouraged this transition. But why did such a profound change occur? What circumstances led a society known for creating enormous stone monuments to adopt an entirely different religious focus? Was the transformation gradual, or did it result from a specific crisis that altered the island's cultural landscape? Archaeological evidence provides valuable insights, but not a complete narrative. The broader history of Rapa Nui has long been the subject of debate. Earlier theories suggested that ecological collapse played a decisive role in reshaping the island's society. According to this interpretation, overuse of natural resources contributed to social upheaval and cultural change. More recent research has proposed a more complex picture, emphasizing resilience, adaptation, and the impact of later outside contact. Even so, significant uncertainties remain. Because Orongo was closely tied to a period of cultural transformation, it occupies a unique position within these discussions. The village appears to represent both continuity and change, a sacred center preserving ancient traditions while also reflecting a society adapting to new realities. Beyond mainstream interpretations, Orongo has inspired a variety of more speculative theories. Some researchers and independent writers have wondered whether the symbolism found at the site preserves fragments of knowledge whose original meanings have been forgotten. The recurring bird imagery, combined with the dramatic ceremonial contests, has encouraged speculation about astronomical observations, navigation traditions, and sacred teachings passed down through generations. Others point to the remarkable isolation of Rapa Nui itself. How did Polynesian navigators locate and settle such a distant island centuries before modern navigation technologies? Their achievements are well documented and widely admired, yet for many observers they remain astonishing. Could elements of that navigational knowledge be encoded within rituals later practiced at places such as Orongo? A few fringe theories venture further still, proposing connections between Rapa Nui and distant civilizations across the Pacific. These ideas often focus on perceived similarities in symbols, myths, or monumental architecture. Most archaeologists remain skeptical of such claims, citing the substantial evidence supporting Polynesian origins and development. Nevertheless, the theories continue to circulate, fueled in part by the island's extraordinary remoteness and enduring aura of mystery. Perhaps the most intriguing aspect of Orongo is not any single unanswered question, but the atmosphere of the site itself. Standing among the stone structures, one can imagine generations of pilgrims gathering here, ceremonies unfolding beneath the open sky, priests observing the ocean, competitors preparing for dangerous journeys toward the distant islets. The cliffs, the sea, and the volcanic landscape would have formed a dramatic backdrop for rituals whose full meanings may never be completely recovered. The petroglyphs remain etched into stone. The buildings endure against the wind. Yet the people who understood every symbol and every ceremony are long gone. What stories were told here during moonlit nights overlooking the Pacific? What sacred knowledge passed from one generation to the next before fading into history? And do the carvings and ruins preserve messages that modern researchers have only begun to understand? As waves continue to strike the cliffs below and seabirds circle above the ancient village, Orongo remains a place suspended between evidence and interpretation, a ceremonial landscape that reveals much about the people of Rapa Nui, while quietly withholding just enough to ensure that its deepest mysteries remain beyond our reach. From the windswept cliffs of Orongo, where sacred rituals unfolded above the vast Pacific, our journey now carries us across another ocean and into a very different landscape. Here, there are no towering coastal cliffs or distant volcanic islets. Instead, steep mountains rise above a narrow river valley, their slopes casting long shadows across a place that remained hidden from the modern world for thousands of years. In the highlands of present-day Peru stands La Galgada, an ancient ceremonial complex whose origins reach back into one of the least understood chapters of human history. Nestled within the Tablachaca Canyon of the Andes, La Galgada appears almost modest at first glance. Surrounded by rugged terrain and isolated from major urban centers, the site blends naturally into the landscape. Yet beneath layers of stone, earth, and time lies evidence of a sophisticated ceremonial tradition that flourished long before many of the civilizations commonly associated with monumental architecture. The setting itself feels timeless. The river winds through the canyon below. Mountain peaks loom in every direction. During sunrise and sunset, shifting light transforms the valley into a landscape of deep contrasts and muted colors. It is easy to understand why ancient people may have viewed this place as significant. Even today, there is a sense that the location was chosen with purpose. Archaeological investigations have revealed that La Galgada dates to approximately 3000 BC, and perhaps even earlier in some areas. This places it among the oldest known ceremonial centers in the Americas. The site contains carefully constructed mounds, ritual chambers, stone architecture, and evidence of repeated ceremonial activity spanning centuries. What makes La Galgada particularly fascinating is that it emerged during a period when large-scale urban societies had not yet developed in the region. Conventional expectations often associate monumental architecture with powerful kingdoms, centralized governments, or dense populations. Yet La Galgada appears to challenge those assumptions. Who organized the construction of these structures? What beliefs inspired people to invest such effort into creating ceremonial spaces deep within a remote mountain valley? These questions continue to shape discussions among archaeologists today. Excavations have uncovered complex architectural features, including circular rooms, carefully planned passageways, and enclosed ritual spaces. Many of these structures seem designed not for everyday living, but for symbolic or ceremonial purposes. Evidence suggests that buildings were repeatedly renovated, modified, and sometimes deliberately buried beneath new construction. This pattern appears throughout many ancient ceremonial centers around the world. Rather than simply abandoning old structures, communities often entombed them beneath newer ones, creating layered monuments that preserved the past while simultaneously reshaping it. At La Galgada, this process occurred again and again, gradually transforming the site into a physical record of generations of ritual activity. Yet the reasons behind these actions remain uncertain. Were the older structures considered sacred? Did burial and reconstruction symbolize renewal, continuity, or communication with ancestors? The archaeological evidence offers possibilities but rarely definitive answers. Some of the most intriguing discoveries involve human burials found within the ceremonial complex. Certain individuals appear to have received special treatment, suggesting that they held important roles within their communities. Bodies were carefully wrapped and placed within ritual contexts that imply a deep concern with death, memory, and spiritual transformation. These burials hint at belief systems that are only partially understood today. Without written records, researchers must rely on architecture, artifacts, and patterns of activity to reconstruct the worldview of the people who built La Galgada. Every stone wall, every ceremonial chamber, and every burial becomes part of a larger puzzle. The challenge is that many pieces are missing. Unlike civilizations that left extensive texts, the builders of La Galgada communicated primarily through materials, symbols, and actions rather than written language. Their motivations survive only indirectly, preserved in fragments scattered across the archaeological record. As a result, interpretation often involves careful inference. Most researchers view La Galgada as an important ceremonial center serving communities throughout the surrounding region. Ritual gatherings may have strengthened social bonds, reinforced shared beliefs, and connected people to both ancestors and the natural landscape. The mountains themselves may have played a significant role. Throughout Andean history, prominent peaks were often regarded as sacred entities associated with spiritual power. Some scholars suggest that La Galgada's location was chosen partly because of its relationship to surrounding geographic features. The architecture, orientation, and ceremonial activities may have reflected a worldview in which landscape and spirituality were inseparable. Yet certain aspects of the site remain difficult to explain fully. Why did ceremonial architecture emerge here at such an early date? What social structures supported its construction? And how extensive was its influence beyond the canyon itself? These uncertainties have encouraged broader speculation. Some researchers have wondered whether sites like La Galgada reveal forms of social organization that do not fit conventional models of early civilization. Perhaps complex ceremonial traditions emerged before large political systems. Perhaps spiritual beliefs provided the organizational framework that later societies would eventually build upon. Others have proposed that important knowledge was transmitted through rituals performed at locations like this one. Without writing, sacred traditions may have been preserved through ceremonies, architecture, and oral teachings repeated across generations. More speculative theories venture even further. A few independent writers have suggested that La Galgada represents the surviving remnant of a much larger network of ancient ceremonial centers, whose full extent has yet to be discovered. According to these ideas, many early sites may still lie hidden beneath mountain valleys, buried by landslides, sediment, or centuries of natural change. There are also those who view the sophistication of the architecture as evidence that ancient societies possessed a deeper understanding of engineering, astronomy, or environmental planning than is commonly assumed. While mainstream archaeology generally emphasizes gradual cultural development supported by available evidence, such theories continue to attract attention because of how little is known about the earliest phases of Andean civilization. Perhaps that uncertainty is what makes La Galgada so compelling. Unlike more famous archaeological sites that dominate popular imagination, La Galgada remains relatively quiet, tucked away within its canyon as though protected by the landscape itself. Its mysteries are not dramatic in the conventional sense. There are no colossal statues, vast palaces, or legendary treasures waiting to be uncovered. Instead, its mystery lies in something more subtle. It lies in the emergence of complex ideas long before written history. It lies in the decision to build ceremonial monuments where none seemed necessary. It lies in the generations of people who returned to the same sacred place, modifying it, preserving it, and investing it with meaning that has largely vanished from memory. As shadows drift across the canyon and the river continues its ancient course below, La Galgada remains an enduring reminder of how much of humanity's distant past still escapes our understanding. The stones remain, the structures endure, and the traces of ritual survive. But the thoughts of the people who gathered here, their beliefs, their stories, and the deeper purpose behind this remarkable place, remain just beyond our reach, waiting in silence beneath the mountains. From the secluded mountain valleys of La Galgada, where ancient rituals were woven into stone long before written history emerged, our journey now leads to a different kind of mystery, one carved not only into architecture, but into language itself. Deep within the lush forests of Central America stands a monument that has challenged archaeologists, historians, and epigraphers for generations. It is a staircase unlike any other, a structure that transforms stone into a vast historical record. Yet despite decades of study, parts of its message remain frustratingly incomplete. This is the hieroglyphic Stairway of Copan. Nestled within a fertile valley in present-day Honduras, the ancient city of Copan was once among the most sophisticated centers of the Maya world. Surrounded by rolling hills and dense vegetation, the city flourished for centuries as a hub of politics, religion, astronomy, and art. Its plazas, temples, and monuments reflected a civilization capable of extraordinary achievements. Among all of Copan's treasures, however, one structure stands apart. Rising along the side of a pyramid known today as Structure 26, the hieroglyphic stairway consists of more than 60 stone steps covered with carved glyphs. Together, these inscriptions form the longest known Maya text ever discovered. Thousands of individual symbols stretch upward across the staircase, creating what has often been described as a stone library preserved beneath the tropical sky. At first glance, the monument appears almost overwhelming. Each block is covered with intricate carvings. Faces emerge from the stone. Symbols intertwine with images of rulers and deities. The staircase seems less like a conventional monument and more like a coded message left behind by a vanished civilization. And in many ways, that is exactly what it is. The staircase was commissioned during the reign of a ruler known as Kak Yipyaj Chan Kawil in the 8th century A.D. Its purpose appears to have been both political and historical. Through its inscriptions, the monument recounts the lineage of Copan's kings, tracing centuries of dynastic history and reinforcing the legitimacy of those who ruled the city. Yet, understanding the message has proven far from simple. Over the centuries, portions of the staircase collapsed. Stones shifted from their original positions. Entire sections became scattered and disordered. When archaeologists eventually excavated the site, they faced an enormous challenge: thousands of carved blocks that no longer occupied their intended locations. Imagine discovering a book whose pages had been torn apart, mixed together, and buried for centuries. This is essentially the problem researchers encountered at Copan. For decades, scholars have worked painstakingly to reconstruct the sequence of glyphs. Through linguistic analysis, historical comparison, and careful archaeological study, much of the text has been restored. The decipherment of Maya writing during the 20th century revealed that the staircase preserves an invaluable historical narrative. But not every mystery has been solved. Some damaged sections remain uncertain. Certain glyphs can be interpreted in multiple ways. Even today, debates continue regarding the precise meaning of particular passages. The challenge is compounded by the complexity of Maya writing itself. Unlike alphabetic systems, Maya hieroglyphs combine phonetic signs with symbolic elements. A single inscription can carry multiple layers of meaning, blending historical events, religious concepts, political messages, and references to mythology. As a result, translation often involves interpretation as much as direct reading. What did the original audience understand when they climbed these steps? Did every visitor grasp the full meaning of the inscriptions, or were certain messages reserved for priests, rulers, and scribes trained in the intricacies of sacred writing? The staircase raises broader questions as well. Why invest such extraordinary effort into creating a historical record in this form? Why transform an architectural feature into a monumental text? What role did memory and history play within Maya society? For many researchers, the answer lies in the Maya understanding of time. Ancient Maya civilizations placed enormous importance on historical continuity. Rulers connected themselves to ancestors, sacred events, and cosmic cycles. The past was not viewed as something distant and separate. Instead, it remained actively intertwined with the present. The hieroglyphic stairway may have served as a physical expression of this worldview, a pathway through history itself, where every step symbolically connected the living to generations that came before. Yet certain aspects remain elusive. Some inscriptions refer to events that are only partially understood. Others mention individuals whose identities remain uncertain. Gaps in the archaeological record leave room for interpretation, and interpretation inevitably invites speculation. Over the years, the monument has inspired theories extending beyond conventional scholarship. Some researchers have wondered whether portions of the staircase encode astronomical knowledge alongside political history. Maya civilizations possessed remarkable expertise in observing celestial cycles, and astronomy played a significant role in their culture. Could certain sequences of glyphs contain symbolic references that modern readers have yet to fully recognize? Others point to recurring themes within Maya inscriptions more broadly: cycles of creation, destruction, renewal, and cosmic order. The staircase records historical events, but perhaps it was also intended to communicate deeper philosophical ideas about humanity's place within the universe. More speculative theories move further still. A handful of writers have suggested that the complexity of Maya knowledge, including their sophisticated calendars and mathematical achievements, hints at sources of information not yet fully understood. Some propose forgotten traditions passed through generations over vast spans of time. Others argue that undiscovered texts may still exist beneath the ruins of ancient Maya cities, waiting to provide new insights into their worldview. Mainstream archaeology generally approaches such ideas cautiously, emphasizing evidence while acknowledging how much remains unknown. Nevertheless, the persistence of these theories reflects a larger reality. Despite tremendous progress in deciphering Maya writing, many questions remain unanswered. The tropical environment has not been kind to the historical record. Countless Maya books were lost over the centuries. Entire libraries disappeared. The hieroglyphic stairway survives as one of the rare voices still speaking from that world, yet it speaks through fragments, damaged passages, and symbols whose meanings are not always certain. Standing before the staircase today, one is confronted by more than an archaeological monument. It is a conversation across time. Each carved block represents an attempt to preserve memory against the forces of decay and forgetting. Each glyph reflects the work of scribes who believed their words would endure for generations. And remarkably, many of them have. Yet not all. Some messages remain incomplete. Some names have faded. Some stories survive only as broken fragments scattered across stone steps. As sunlight moves across the ancient carvings and shadows gather among the ruins of Copan, the staircase continues to challenge those who study it. It reveals enough to illuminate an extraordinary civilization, yet conceals enough to remind us how fragile knowledge can be. Somewhere within its remaining mysteries may lie details still waiting to be understood, forgotten histories, hidden meanings, or perhaps entirely new questions that future generations have yet to ask. From the stone-carved records of Copan, where forgotten rulers left fragments of their history etched into a monumental staircase, we travel across oceans and centuries to another place where the past speaks in symbols that remain stubbornly silent. Here, in the sunlit landscapes of Crete, an ancient palace complex overlooks fertile plains and distant mountains. Among its ruins was discovered one of archaeology's most enduring puzzles, a mysterious artifact whose message has resisted every attempt at translation. This is Phaistos, a site where history and mystery remain inseparably intertwined. The ruins of Phaistos occupy a commanding position on a hillside overlooking the Masara Plain, the largest agricultural region on the island of Crete. From its elevated terraces, the surrounding landscape stretches toward distant peaks and the shimmering waters beyond. The setting is both beautiful and strategic, a place that seems carefully chosen by those who settled here thousands of years ago. Long before the rise of classical Greece, Phaistos was one of the principal centers of the Minoan civilization, a culture that flourished during the Bronze Age and helped shape the ancient Mediterranean world. The palace that once stood here rivaled the great complexes of Knossos and Malea. Its courtyards, storerooms, staircases, workshops, and ceremonial spaces reveal a society of remarkable sophistication. Yet, unlike many ancient civilizations, the Minoans left behind few answers about who they truly were. Their cities have been excavated. Their artwork survives. Their trade networks are well documented. But their language remains largely beyond our understanding. And nowhere is that mystery more concentrated than in a single object discovered at Phaistos in 1908. Known today as the Phaistos Disk, the artifact is deceptively small. Made of fired clay and roughly the size of a dinner plate, it contains spiraling rows of symbols impressed into its surface. At first glance, the disk appears almost modern in its precision. Tiny figures, animals, tools, and geometric shapes wind inward in a carefully arranged pattern. The symbols are unlike anything else found in the ancient world. There are human heads adorned with elaborate headdresses, birds in flight, shields, flowers, and objects whose meanings remain uncertain. In total, dozens of unique signs appear across both sides of the disk, organized with extraordinary care. More than a century after its discovery, no one knows exactly what it says. This uncertainty is remarkable. Countless ancient scripts have been deciphered through painstaking research. Egyptian hieroglyphs, cuneiform tablets, and Maya inscriptions all eventually yielded their secrets. Yet the Phaistos disk remains stubbornly resistant to interpretation. One reason is simple but frustrating. It is unique. No second example has ever been found. Without additional texts for comparison, researchers face immense challenges. Language systems are typically deciphered through patterns repeated across multiple documents. The disk offers only a single specimen. It stands alone, isolated from the larger context that scholars usually rely upon. As a result, theories about its meaning vary enormously. Some researchers believe it contains a religious hymn or ceremonial text. Others suggest it may record a prayer, a historical narrative, or even a form of administrative record. Certain scholars have proposed that the symbols represent syllables, while others argue they function as pictographic signs carrying broader meanings. Each theory explains some aspects of the artifact while leaving other questions unresolved. The mystery extends beyond the symbols themselves. The method used to create the disc is also unusual. Rather than carving each sign individually, the creator appears to have stamped symbols into wet clay using pre-made molds. This process resembles a primitive form of printing, thousands of years before printing technologies became widespread elsewhere. Why employ such a technique? Was the disc part of a larger tradition now lost to history? Were similar texts once common, only to disappear over time? Or does the artifact represent an experimental creation unlike anything produced before or after? The answers remain elusive. The palace complex surrounding the disc provides important clues but no definitive solution. Archaeologists have uncovered evidence of advanced architecture, extensive trade networks, and sophisticated social organization. The Minoans maintained contacts across the Mediterranean, exchanging goods and ideas with distant cultures. Yet despite these achievements, many aspects of their civilization remain obscure. Even the reasons for the decline of Minoan power continue to be debated. Natural disasters, political upheaval, economic disruptions, and external influences have all been proposed as contributing factors. The eruption of Thera, explored earlier in our journey, may have played a significant role, though the extent of its impact remains the subject of ongoing discussion. Within this broader context of uncertainty, the Phaistos disk occupies a special place. It is not merely an undeciphered artifact. It is a reminder of how much knowledge can vanish. Entire languages can disappear. Writing systems can become unreadable. Cultural traditions can fade until only fragments remain. The disk stands as a rare survivor from a world whose voice has grown faint with the passage of time. Naturally, such mysteries have encouraged more speculative interpretations. Some researchers have suggested that the disk may represent a language unrelated to any known writing system. Others wonder whether it preserves elements of a cultural tradition that developed independently from neighboring civilizations. The uniqueness of the artifact leaves room for possibilities that cannot yet be fully tested. More speculative theories venture further. A few writers have proposed that the disk encodes astronomical knowledge, sacred teachings, or hidden mathematical concepts. Others see symbolic patterns that they believe point toward ritual practices or esoteric traditions now completely forgotten. Because the text remains undeciphered, such ideas are difficult to confirm or dismiss conclusively. There have even been debates regarding the artifact's authenticity, though most specialists regard it as genuine. The very existence of such debates illustrates how unusual the disk appears when compared to other archaeological discoveries. And perhaps that is what makes it so compelling. Most mysteries gradually shrink as new evidence emerges. The Phaistos disk has done the opposite. Decades of research have revealed fascinating details about its construction and context, yet its central question remains untouched. What does it say? Standing among the ruins of Phaistos today, one can imagine scribes, priests, artisans, and rulers moving through the palace courtyards thousands of years ago. Somewhere among them may have been the individual who pressed those symbols into clay, fully aware of their meaning and purpose. To that person, the message was probably clear, perhaps even ordinary. Now, it is one of the ancient world's greatest enigmas. As sunlight washes across the weathered stones of the palace and winds sweep through the ruins, the disk continues to guard its secret. It has survived earthquakes, invasions, collapse, and the passage of millennia. Yet the knowledge needed to read it remains absent. Whether its message contains something profound, something practical, or something entirely unexpected, no one can say for certain. And until another clue emerges from the soil of Crete or the archives of history, the silent symbols of Phaistos will continue to invite the same enduring question. What forgotten voice is still waiting to be heard? From the silent symbols of Phaistos, whose message remains locked away behind thousands of years of uncertainty, we move once again across oceans and continents to another ancient landscape where answers remain frustratingly incomplete. Here, the mystery is not contained within a single artifact or undeciphered text, but within the very origins of a civilization. Hidden beneath the expanding urban sprawl of modern Lima, Peru, lies Garagay, a ceremonial center whose striking imagery and unexpected sophistication continue to challenge our understanding of the ancient Americas. At first glance, Garagay seems an unlikely place for one of Peru's most intriguing archaeological sites. Modern roads, buildings, and neighborhoods surround the area today, making it easy to overlook what lies beneath. Yet beneath layers of soil and centuries of development rests a monumental complex that predates many of the better-known cultures of the Andean world. The site emerged into modern awareness during the 20th century, revealing a series of ceremonial structures built from adobe and earth. Archaeologists soon realized they were looking at something extraordinary. Dating largely to around 1400 to 1000 BC, Garagay belonged to a period when complex societies were beginning to take shape along Peru's coast and valleys. But the more researchers uncovered, the more mysterious the site became. The ceremonial center consists of large platform mounds, sunken plazas, and carefully planned architectural spaces. These features suggest that Garagay served as an important religious and social gathering place. Communities may have traveled considerable distances to participate in ceremonies conducted here. Yet what truly distinguishes the site are the remarkable images hidden within its architecture. During excavations, archaeologists discovered enormous friezes crafted from clay and painted in vivid colors. Although many have suffered damage over time, enough survives to reveal scenes unlike anything commonly encountered in the modern world. Towering anthropomorphic figures stare outward from ancient walls. Human and animal characteristics blend together in ways that seem simultaneously familiar and strange. Jaguar-like features appear alongside human faces. Birds merge with symbolic forms. Powerful eyes gaze from sculpted surfaces that have remained buried for centuries. Who created these images? What stories were they attempting to tell? And perhaps most intriguingly, what did these figures mean to the people who gathered beneath them thousands of years ago? Mainstream archaeology generally interprets the artwork within the context of early Andean religious traditions. Similar motifs appear throughout various ancient cultures of the region. Feline imagery, in particular, seems to have carried deep symbolic significance. Predators such as jaguars often represented power, transformation, authority, or connections to spiritual realms. Garagay appears to fit within this broader pattern. Yet the complexity of the imagery raises important questions. Some figures seem to combine multiple identities into a single form. Human beings become animals. Animals acquire human traits. Boundaries that modern observers often take for granted appear fluid and uncertain. This blending of forms may reflect a worldview very different from our own. Perhaps these images represented deities. Perhaps they depicted mythical ancestors or supernatural beings. Or perhaps they symbolized transformations believed possible within sacred rituals. Without written records, certainty remains elusive. The mystery deepens when considering Garagay's place within Andean history. For many years, scholars focused heavily on later civilizations such as the Moche, Nazca, and Inca. Sites like Garagay received less attention. Yet discoveries here suggest that complex religious traditions were already flourishing long before those famous cultures emerged. This realization has forced researchers to reconsider long-standing assumptions. How extensive were these early ceremonial networks? How much cultural exchange existed between distant communities? And how many important centers remain hidden beneath modern cities, agricultural lands, or unexplored landscapes? Garagay may represent only a fragment of a much larger story. Its architecture reveals sophisticated planning, Its ceremonial spaces indicate organized communal activity. Its artwork demonstrates highly developed symbolic traditions. Yet many aspects of the site remain difficult to reconstruct. The original colors of the friezes have largely faded. Portions of the structures were damaged before archaeologists could fully document them. Modern development occasionally threatened sections of the site, complicating efforts to preserve and study what remained. As a result, researchers are often forced to work with incomplete evidence. Like investigators assembling a puzzle with missing pieces, they attempt to reconstruct a world that has largely disappeared. One particularly intriguing aspect of Garagay involves its apparent relationship to broader religious traditions throughout ancient Peru. Certain stylistic elements resemble imagery associated with other ceremonial centers, including sites connected to what archaeologists sometimes call the Chavin religious horizon. Did these similarities emerge through direct contact? Were ideas, symbols, and rituals traveling across vast regions centuries before large political states existed? Or did separate communities independently develop comparable spiritual concepts? The answers remain uncertain. Some researchers suggest that Garagay may have played a role in an extensive network of ceremonial interaction stretching across different ecological zones. Pilgrims, traders, and religious specialists may have carried beliefs and symbolic traditions from one region to another, creating cultural connections that archaeology is only beginning to recognize. Others argue that the similarities between sites reflect deeper shared foundations within early Andean spirituality. Both possibilities are fascinating, yet neither fully explains the enduring sense of mystery surrounding the site. As with many ancient monuments, Garagay has also inspired more speculative interpretations. Some independent researchers view the hybrid figures as evidence of esoteric traditions whose meanings have been lost entirely. Others wonder whether the imagery encoded astronomical knowledge, seasonal cycles, or ceremonial teachings communicated visually rather than through written language. A few theories venture further still, suggesting that the site's symbolic complexity points toward a forgotten level of intellectual development among early Andean societies, one that modern scholarship has not yet fully appreciated. Mainstream archaeology remains cautious regarding such claims, emphasizing evidence-based interpretations while acknowledging the many unknowns that persist. Nevertheless, the existence of these theories highlights a fundamental reality. Garagay still has secrets to reveal. Even today, archaeologists continue to debate aspects of the site's chronology, symbolism, and cultural significance. Every new discovery seems to generate additional questions. Why were certain images buried and preserved beneath later construction phases? What rituals unfolded within the sunken plazas? What emotions did visitors experience when they encountered these towering figures emerging from brightly painted walls? And perhaps most importantly, how much of the original meaning has been lost forever? Standing amid the remnants of Garagay, it is impossible not to feel the weight of that uncertainty. The ancient builders left no written explanation. They offered no guide to their beliefs, no translation of their symbols, no direct account of their intentions. Instead, they left architecture, imagery, and silence. The adobe walls continue to endure beneath the modern city. Fragments of painted figures still emerge from the earth. Their eyes seem to watch across the centuries, carrying messages that remain only partially understood. As researchers uncover more of this forgotten ceremonial center, Garagay continues to blur the line between what we know and what we merely suspect. Somewhere beneath the soil, perhaps hidden within unexcavated structures or overlooked details, there may be clues capable of transforming our understanding of the ancient Andes. Until then, the enigmatic faces of Garagay remain fixed in silent observation, inviting us to wonder what knowledge they were meant to preserve, and what secrets may still lie waiting beneath the ground. From the enigmatic adobe temples of Garagay, where silent figures gaze outward from walls buried for thousands of years, our journey now takes us across the Pacific to another civilization whose secrets remained hidden beneath the earth until remarkably recently. Here, the mystery is not simply what an ancient culture built, but how an entire center of power could disappear from history so completely that its existence was forgotten for centuries. In the heart of southwestern China lies the Jinsha Site, a place where dazzling treasures, strange symbols, and unanswered questions have reshaped our understanding of the ancient world. Unlike many famous archaeological discoveries, Jinsha was not uncovered by explorers searching remote deserts or excavating long-known ruins. Its story began unexpectedly in 2001, when construction workers preparing land for development in the modern city of Chengdu unearthed fragments of ancient ivory, jade, stone, and gold. What initially appeared to be an isolated discovery soon revealed something far more extraordinary. Beneath the modern landscape lay the remains of a major Bronze Age civilization. Archaeologists quickly recognized the significance of what they had found. As excavations expanded, they uncovered ceremonial areas, residential zones, workshops, and vast quantities of precious artifacts. The scale of the discovery suggested that Jinsha had once been an important political and religious center, flourishing between roughly 1200 and 650 BC. Yet the site's greatest significance emerged from a deeper mystery. Many scholars believe Jinsha was closely connected to the enigmatic Sanxingdui civilization, one of the most puzzling cultures ever discovered in ancient China. Decades earlier, Sanxingdui had astonished researchers with its massive bronze masks, oversized eyes, intricate sculptures, and artistic traditions unlike anything previously known from the region. Then came an unexpected question. What happened after Sanxingdui vanished? For years, archaeologists struggled to answer it. Jinsha may provide part of the solution. The artifacts discovered here share striking similarities with those of Sanxingdui. Certain artistic styles, religious symbols, and manufacturing techniques suggest cultural continuity between the two sites. Rather than disappearing entirely, the civilization may have shifted its center of activity to a new location. If true, Jinsha would represent not a separate culture, but the continuation of a remarkable tradition. Yet, even this explanation raises further questions. Why was the original center abandoned? What event caused such a significant relocation? And why do the surviving records reveal so little about the process? The mysteries begin the moment one examines the artifacts themselves. Among the most famous discoveries is a delicate gold ornament known as the Sun and Immortal Bird. The object features a circular design containing 4 birds flying around a central solar motif. Elegant and symmetrical, it has become one of the most iconic symbols of ancient Chinese archaeology. Yet its precise meaning remains uncertain. Did it represent a religious belief, a cosmological model, a royal emblem, or something else entirely? Many researchers believe the design reflects ancient concepts concerning the sun and the movement of celestial forces. Similar themes appear throughout various ancient cultures, where the heavens often played a central role in mythology and ritual life. But certainty remains elusive. The site has also yielded thousands of artifacts crafted from jade, bronze, stone, ivory, and gold. Many appear ceremonial rather than practical. Large quantities of valuable objects were deliberately deposited within specific areas, suggesting ritual activity on a significant scale. Some pits contained immense concentrations of ivory tusks. Others held carefully arranged offerings. Why were these objects buried? What ceremonies unfolded here? And what beliefs inspired people to sacrifice such extraordinary wealth? The answers remain partially hidden beneath layers of interpretation. Mainstream archaeology generally views Jinsha as a center where political authority and religious practice were closely intertwined. Ritual offerings may have served to communicate with ancestors, deities, or natural forces believed to influence the world. Yet the scale of some deposits continues to provoke discussion. The sheer quantity of valuable materials suggests a society capable of mobilizing considerable resources. Such efforts imply complex social structures, specialized artisans, and a powerful belief system capable of inspiring collective participation. Who governed this society? How extensive was its influence? And why did so much of its history disappear? Unlike some ancient civilizations, Jinsha left no extensive written records capable of answering these questions directly. As a result, archaeologists must reconstruct the story through artifacts, architecture, and patterns buried within the landscape. The process resembles assembling a vast historical puzzle with many pieces still missing. One particularly intriguing aspect of Jinsha involves its apparent relationship with the natural environment. Geological evidence suggests that environmental changes may have affected settlements throughout the region. Flooding, shifting river systems, or other natural events may have influenced population movements and political transformations. Could environmental pressures explain the transition from Sangsingdui to Jinsha? Some researchers believe so. Others argue that political changes, economic developments, or religious factors may have played equally important roles. The truth may involve a combination of influences. Yet uncertainty persists because the evidence remains incomplete. As with many archaeological mysteries, gaps in the record encourage broader speculation. Some researchers have suggested that the unusual artistic traditions associated with Sangsingdui and Jinsha reflect a cultural identity distinct from neighboring civilizations. Their bronze masks, symbolic imagery, and ritual objects differ noticeably from many contemporary traditions elsewhere in ancient China. Did this represent an independent worldview that evolved separately for centuries? Or were these differences simply regional expressions within a larger cultural landscape? The debate continues. More speculative theories extend even further. The large bronze figures, unusual masks, and recurring celestial symbols found in related sites have inspired interpretations ranging from forgotten mythological systems to lost forms of astronomical knowledge. Certain writers have argued that the imagery reflects observations of the heavens encoded through symbolic art. Others propose that the artifacts preserve fragments of traditions whose original meanings have long since vanished. Most archaeologists approach such ideas carefully, emphasizing the importance of evidence while acknowledging how much remains unknown. Still, it is easy to understand why Jinsha captures the imagination. The site emerged unexpectedly from beneath a modern city. It revealed a sophisticated civilization that had largely vanished from historical memory, and it provided clues to mysteries that had puzzled researchers for decades. Even today, excavations continue to generate new discoveries. Every artifact contributes another fragment to the story. Yet each answer seems accompanied by additional questions. What ceremonies took place beneath the open skies of ancient Jinsha? What significance did the golden birds and solar symbols hold for those who created them? Why did one center flourish while another faded? And how many chapters of this civilization's history remain hidden beneath the modern landscape of Chengdu? As evening settles across the excavation grounds and shadows stretch over the buried remains of temples, workshops, and ritual spaces, Jinsha stands as a reminder of how fragile historical memory can be. Entire civilizations may rise, flourish, and disappear, leaving behind only fragments waiting to be rediscovered. The gold still gleams, the symbols endure, but the voices that once gave them meaning remain silent, inviting us to wonder what other forgotten stories may still lie concealed beneath the earth, waiting for the moment they are uncovered once again. From the buried treasures of Jinsha, where a forgotten civilization emerged unexpectedly from beneath a modern city, our journey now leads westward to the shores of the Aegean Sea. Here, another mystery waits among low hills, olive groves, and quiet coastal plains. Unlike the dazzling gold of Jinsha, or the undeciphered symbols of Phaistos, the mystery of Lefkandi lies in something more subtle. It challenges not what we know about an ancient civilization, but what we thought we knew about an entire era of history. For generations, historians believed that the collapse of the great Bronze Age kingdoms of Greece ushered in a prolonged period of decline. Palaces fell silent, trade networks weakened, writing disappeared, monumental construction largely ceased. This period became known as the Greek Dark Age, a time often imagined as an age of isolation and cultural stagnation. Then came Lefkandi. Located on the island of Euboea, overlooking the waters of the Euboean Gulf, the site occupies a landscape that seems peaceful and unremarkable. Rolling terrain slopes gently toward the sea. Fishing boats move across calm waters. The distant mountains shimmer beneath the Mediterranean sun. Yet beneath this tranquil setting, archaeologists uncovered evidence that forced scholars to reconsider centuries of assumptions. The discovery that transformed Lefkandi's reputation came during excavations in the late 20th century. Researchers unearthed a massive structure unlike anything expected from the so-called Dark Age. Known today as the Heron of Lefkandi, the building stretched approximately 50 meters in length, making it one of the largest known structures from this period in Greece. Its size alone was surprising. According to traditional interpretations, societies during this era lacked the organizational capacity for such ambitious projects. Yet here stood evidence suggesting otherwise. The structure had been carefully planned and skillfully constructed. Wooden columns supported its roof. Stone foundations provided stability. Its scale implied access to labor, resources, and technical knowledge far beyond what many researchers had anticipated. But the building itself was only the beginning. Within the structure, archaeologists discovered an extraordinary burial. At its center lay the cremated remains of a man placed inside a bronze vessel of Cypriot origin. Nearby rested the body of a woman adorned with remarkable jewelry, including gold ornaments of exceptional craftsmanship. Alongside them were sacrificed horses, carefully buried in a manner suggesting great ritual significance. The scene immediately raised questions. Who were these individuals? Why were they honored in such an elaborate fashion? And what kind of society possessed both the wealth and the desire to construct such a monument during an era supposedly marked by decline? The answers remain uncertain. Most archaeologists interpret the burial as evidence of an elite class that retained significant power and influence after the collapse of the Mycenaean world. Far from disappearing entirely, social complexity may have persisted in certain regions. Lefkandi appears to demonstrate continuity where historians once assumed collapse. Yet the site also reveals connections extending far beyond Greece itself. Among the artifacts recovered were objects originating from distant lands. Jewelry, ceramics, and luxury goods indicate ongoing contact with regions across the eastern Mediterranean. These discoveries suggest that trade networks, although altered, may never have vanished completely. This realization transformed scholarly understanding of the period. Rather than a complete break with the past, the Greek Dark Age increasingly appeared as a time of adaptation and transformation. Still, important mysteries remain. How extensive were these international connections? Were they maintained through formal trade systems or informal networks? Did Lefkandi occupy a uniquely privileged position, or was it merely one example of a broader pattern that remains largely hidden from the archaeological record? The questions deepen when considering the Heron itself. The structure appears to have served both as a burial monument and a ceremonial space. After the burials took place, the building was intentionally covered by an earthen mound, effectively preserving it beneath the landscape. Why? What symbolic meaning did this act carry? Did those responsible intend to create a lasting memorial for revered leaders? Were they commemorating legendary figures whose stories have since disappeared? Or was the structure connected to traditions that later evolved into the heroic legends of ancient Greece? Some researchers have noted intriguing parallels between the burial and descriptions found in later Greek epic poetry. The combination of elite warriors, precious imported goods, horse sacrifices, and monumental commemoration bears a resemblance to scenes described in works traditionally associated with Homer. This does not necessarily mean the individuals buried at Lefkandi inspired specific legends, but it raises fascinating possibilities. Could sites like Lefkandi preserve glimpses of the world that eventually gave rise to heroic traditions? Was memory of this era transmitted through generations before being transformed into myth? Such questions remain difficult to answer. The archaeological evidence provides tantalizing hints, yet certainty remains beyond reach. As with many ancient mysteries, the gaps between evidence and interpretation have encouraged broader speculation. Some researchers wonder whether Lefkandi represents a surviving center of knowledge inherited from the Bronze Age world. According to this view, certain communities may have preserved traditions, technologies, and social structures while neighboring regions experienced greater disruption. Others suggest that the site reflects the emergence of entirely new forms of leadership and identity during a period of profound change. More speculative theories move further still. A handful of writers have proposed that the Heroon was intentionally designed according to symbolic principles no longer fully understood. They point to its unusual dimensions, orientation, and ceremonial character as evidence that deeper meanings may have been embedded within its architecture. Others argue that the remarkable wealth discovered at the site hints at broader networks of exchange that have yet to be fully documented. Perhaps Lefkandi was part of a much larger maritime system operating quietly during centuries once considered isolated and fragmented. Mainstream archaeology generally treats such ideas cautiously. Yet even cautious interpretations acknowledge a fundamental reality. Lefkandi does not fit neatly into older narratives. The site continues to challenge assumptions. It reminds us that historical periods are rarely as simple as the labels we assign to them. Civilizations do not always vanish completely. Knowledge does not necessarily disappear overnight. Sometimes the past survives in unexpected places, hidden beneath ordinary landscapes until archaeology brings it back into view. Standing on the windswept hills overlooking the sea, it is possible to imagine the people who once gathered here. Ships arriving from distant shores, rituals unfolding around newly completed monuments, stories being told beside fires as generations attempted to make sense of a changing world. What became of the individuals buried within the Heron? Why were they honored with such extraordinary care? And how many other centers like Lefkandi remain undiscovered, their secrets still concealed beneath fields, villages, and coastlines across the Mediterranean? As the evening light settles across the ancient site and the waters of the Aegean reflect the fading sun, Lefkandi remains both a discovery and a question. It has revealed enough to rewrite part of history, yet it continues to conceal the full story of the people who built it. Somewhere between memory and archaeology, between history and legend, the mystery endures, waiting for future discoveries to illuminate what still lies hidden in the shadows of the ancient world. From the windswept shores of Lefkandi, where forgotten elites challenged long-held assumptions about the Greek Dark Age, our journey now carries us deep into the dense tropical forests of the ancient Maya world. Here, beneath towering ceiba trees and tangled vegetation, another mystery emerges. Not one hidden within a tomb or an undeciphered artifact, but one written across the sky itself. In a place known as Uaxactun, ancient architects appear to have aligned stone and earth with the movements of the heavens, creating a landscape where astronomy, religion, and power became inseparable. Today, Uaxactun lies within the jungles of northern Guatemala. The forest surrounds the site on all sides, its canopy stretching toward the horizon in every direction. Birds call from unseen branches. Insects hum beneath the heat of the tropical air. Massive stone structures rise unexpectedly from the greenery, appearing almost like islands in a sea of vegetation. For centuries, the jungle concealed much of this ancient city. When explorers and archaeologists began to study the site in detail during the 20th century, they discovered that Uaxactun was far more than a collection of abandoned ruins. It had once been an important Maya center, occupied for well over 1,000 years and deeply connected to the political and religious life of the region. Yet among all its structures, one particular arrangement would capture the imagination of researchers around the world. Known simply as Group E, the complex consists of a large western pyramid facing a long platform to the east. At first glance, the arrangement may appear unremarkable, but careful observation revealed something intriguing. When viewed from specific locations atop the western pyramid, the rising sun appears to align with different points on the eastern platform during key moments of the year. To many scholars, this seemed to suggest a sophisticated astronomical purpose. Could the builders have created a structure designed to track the movements of the sun? If so, why? The idea was revolutionary when first proposed. It appeared to demonstrate that Maya astronomers were observing celestial cycles centuries before many of their later achievements became famous. Over time, similar architectural arrangements were identified at other Maya sites, leading researchers to recognize a broader pattern. Group E at Uaxactun became one of the earliest and most influential examples of what appeared to be an ancient observational complex. Yet the story is more complicated than it first seems. As archaeological methods improved and additional sites were studied, some researchers began questioning whether the structure functioned precisely as originally believed. While solar alignments certainly appear significant, the details do not always correspond perfectly with a simple astronomical calendar. This raised an important question. Was Group E truly an observatory in the modern sense, or was something more complex taking place? Many archaeologists now suggest that the structure served both ceremonial and astronomical functions. Observations of the sun may have helped determine ritual dates, agricultural activities, or religious festivals. The architecture was not necessarily designed for scientific measurement alone, but as part of a broader worldview in which celestial events carried profound symbolic meaning. In the Maya universe, the heavens were not separate from daily life. The movement of the sun, moon, planets, and stars reflected the actions of powerful forces that shaped existence itself. Kings derived authority through their relationship with cosmic order. Ceremonies often coincided with astronomical events. Time was understood through intricate cycles that connected human history to the rhythms of the sky. Uaxactun appears deeply rooted within this perspective, yet many mysteries remain. Why did certain architectural forms emerge so early in Maya history? How were these alignments discovered without modern instruments? And how much astronomical knowledge was possessed by the people who designed them? The site's importance extends beyond celestial observations. Uaxactun was also a major political center. Archaeologists have uncovered temples, palaces, tombs, inscriptions, and evidence of dynastic rulers whose influence extended throughout the region. During various periods, the city maintained complex relationships with neighboring powers, including the nearby metropolis of Tikal. Some of these relationships were cooperative, others were marked by rivalry and conflict. Hieroglyphic inscriptions reveal episodes of political competition, shifting alliances, and military struggles that shaped the course of Maya history. Yet the surviving texts are incomplete. Important chapters remain missing. As with so many ancient civilizations, fragments of the story survive while others have vanished forever. The jungle itself contributes to the mystery. Beneath the forest floor lie countless structures still waiting to be excavated. Modern technologies such as LiDAR scanning have revealed that the Maya landscape was far more extensive than previously imagined. Entire networks of roads, terraces, reservoirs, and settlements remain hidden beneath the vegetation. What role did Uaxactun play within this broader world? How many additional structures connected to its astronomical traditions remain undiscovered? These questions continue to inspire new research. The mystery deepens when considering the precision of Maya astronomical knowledge more generally. Ancient Maya scholars developed highly sophisticated calendars and tracked celestial cycles with remarkable accuracy. They recorded eclipses, planetary movements, and seasonal patterns long before the arrival of modern scientific instruments. How did this knowledge develop? Was it accumulated gradually through generations of observation? Did specialized priest astronomers preserve and refine it across centuries? Or were there earlier traditions upon which later achievements were built? Most researchers favor explanations rooted in long-term observation and cultural continuity. Yet the scale of Maya accomplishment continues to inspire wonder. Beyond mainstream scholarship, Uaxactun has attracted more speculative interpretations. Some independent researchers suggest that Group E structures encoded knowledge extending beyond simple solar observation. They point to recurring architectural patterns and symbolic motifs as evidence of a deeper cosmological system whose full meaning remains unknown. Others have proposed that certain alignments may correspond to celestial events that modern researchers have yet to fully recognize. According to these theories, the structures functioned not merely as ceremonial centers, but as components within a broader sacred geography linked to the heavens. Most archaeologists remain cautious regarding such interpretations, emphasizing the need for evidence and rigorous analysis. Even so, they acknowledge that many aspects of Maya astronomy remain only partially understood. Perhaps that uncertainty is what makes Uaxactun so compelling. The site stands at the intersection of multiple mysteries. It is a city hidden by the jungle, a center of political power whose history survives in fragments, a place where architecture appears to mirror celestial movements, and a reminder that ancient peoples often viewed the universe through perspectives radically different from our own. Standing atop the ancient pyramid as dawn approaches, one can imagine priests, rulers, and observers gathering in anticipation of sunrise. The first light emerges above the distant horizon. Shadows shift across stone structures. Ceremonies begin. For those present thousands of years ago, such moments may have carried meanings now largely lost to time. As the forest continues to reclaim portions of the ancient city, and archaeologists uncover new clues beneath the earth, Uaxactun remains suspended between knowledge and mystery. Its monuments reveal remarkable achievements, yet they also hint at deeper layers of understanding that remain beyond our grasp. Somewhere within the ruins, hidden beneath centuries of growth and silence, there may still be answers waiting to emerge. Answers that could transform what we know about the people who once watched the heavens from this extraordinary place. From the jungle-covered pyramids of Uaxactun, where ancient observers may have tracked the movements of the heavens through carefully aligned stone monuments, our journey now shifts across the Atlantic to the shores of the Mediterranean. Here, another archaeological mystery awaits, not hidden beneath dense forests, but entombed beneath volcanic rock. It is a place where time appears to have stopped in an instant, preserving fragments of an ancient world with astonishing detail. Yet despite centuries of excavation, Herculaneum continues to raise questions that remain surprisingly difficult to answer. Along the Bay of Naples, beneath the shadow of Mount Vesuvius, lie the remains of a Roman town unlike almost any other archaeological site on Earth. Today, visitors walk through streets lined with ancient houses, workshops, baths, and public buildings. Wooden beams still survive in places. Furniture, doors, food, and even delicate architectural details remain visible. It feels less like a ruin and more like a frozen moment. The town's preservation is so extraordinary that it often seems as though its inhabitants stepped away only yesterday. But beneath this remarkable preservation lies a profound mystery. On the surface, the story appears straightforward. In AD 79, Mount Vesuvius erupted catastrophically, devastating communities throughout the region. Nearby Pompeii was buried beneath layers of volcanic ash and pumice. Herculaneum, located closer to the volcano, experienced a different fate. Superheated pyroclastic flows surged across the landscape at tremendous speed, engulfing the town beneath meters of volcanic material. Within hours, an entire community vanished. Yet, as archaeologists began uncovering the buried city centuries later, they encountered questions that complicated this seemingly simple narrative. One of the first mysteries involved the town's final moments. For many years, relatively few human remains were discovered within Herculaneum itself. This led some researchers to believe that much of the population had successfully evacuated before disaster struck. It seemed plausible. Residents may have recognized the danger and fled toward the coast. Then, new discoveries changed the picture dramatically. During excavations near ancient waterfront structures, archaeologists uncovered hundreds of skeletal remains. Men, women, and children were found clustered inside boat chambers and along the shoreline. These individuals appear to have been waiting for rescue as the eruption unfolded. The discovery transformed understanding of the disaster. Instead of a largely successful evacuation, evidence suggested a desperate attempt to escape that ended in tragedy. Yet even here, questions remain. Exactly how did these people die? What did they experience during those final moments? How quickly did events unfold? Scientific studies continue to explore these questions. Evidence suggests that temperatures during the pyroclastic surge reached extraordinary levels. The lethal cloud may have struck with little warning, leaving virtually no opportunity for survival. And yet, each new analysis seems to reveal additional complexities. Herculaneum's mysteries are not limited to the eruption itself. Perhaps the most famous unanswered question concerns a remarkable structure known as the Villa of the Papyri. Discovered during early excavations, this enormous seaside villa contained one of the most extraordinary archaeological finds ever made, a library. Hundreds of ancient scrolls were recovered from the site, preserved through carbonization during the eruption. Although blackened and fragile, they survived where countless other ancient texts were lost forever. The implications were astonishing. Most ancient libraries have vanished without a trace. Entire literary traditions disappeared over the centuries through war, decay, and neglect. Here, however, was a collection of original manuscripts preserved by catastrophe. Yet the discovery introduced a new challenge. The scrolls could not easily be opened. Many crumbled when early attempts were made to unroll them. Others remained sealed, their contents trapped within carbonized layers. For generations, researchers wondered what knowledge might be hidden inside. Could the library contain lost works of philosophy, historical records, scientific writings, literary masterpieces believed lost forever? Recent advances in imaging technology have offered hope. Using sophisticated scanning techniques, researchers have begun identifying traces of text within some unopened scrolls without physically unrolling them. The results are promising. Yet most of the collection remains only partially understood. Thousands of words may still lie hidden inside documents that no human has read for nearly 2,000 years. What forgotten knowledge might they contain? The question continues to captivate scholars around the world. The villa itself raises additional mysteries. Its immense size and luxurious design suggest ownership by a member of Rome's elite. Some researchers have proposed possible identities, linking the property to influential political families. Others remain cautious, noting that definitive evidence remains elusive. Who owned the villa? What conversations took place within its halls? And why did it contain such a remarkable collection of texts? The answers remain uncertain. Elsewhere in Herculaneum, archaeologists have uncovered evidence of daily life preserved with extraordinary clarity. Shops, homes, kitchens, and workshops reveal details rarely visible at other ancient sites. Yet this abundance of information sometimes creates its own puzzles. Objects survive, but their meanings are not always obvious. Rooms served purposes that remain debated. Certain artifacts appear unusual or difficult to classify. Graffiti and inscriptions offer glimpses into personal lives, but often raise as many questions as they answer. The city feels tantalizingly close to understanding, yet never completely transparent. As with many remarkable archaeological sites, Herculaneum has inspired more speculative interpretations as well. Some researchers have suggested that undiscovered sections of the Villa of the Papyri may still lie buried beneath modern structures and unexcavated ground. If true, additional libraries could remain hidden underground. The possibility is difficult to ignore. What if thousands more scrolls are waiting beneath layers of volcanic rock? What if works long thought lost still survive in sealed chambers? Such ideas remain speculative, but not impossible. The history of archaeology repeatedly demonstrates that extraordinary discoveries sometimes emerge from places already believed to be thoroughly explored. More unconventional theories occasionally venture further, proposing hidden knowledge encoded within the scrolls, or suggesting that the eruption preserved insights into ancient science and philosophy that could reshape historical understanding. Most scholars approach such claims with caution. Nevertheless, they acknowledge a simple reality. Until the remaining texts can be read, nobody knows exactly what information they contain. And that uncertainty keeps the mystery alive. Standing today on an ancient street in Herculaneum, it is easy to feel suspended between two worlds. The preserved buildings create an illusion of familiarity. Doorways remain intact, courtyards still open toward the sky. Decorative paintings survive on walls. Yet beneath that familiarity lies an unsettling silence. The people who lived here left behind extraordinary traces of their lives, but their final thoughts, their private conversations, and much of their knowledge disappeared with them. The volcanic material that destroyed the town also preserved it. The same catastrophe that ended countless lives created one of history's most remarkable archaeological time capsules. And still, after centuries of excavation, Herculaneum refuses to surrender all its secrets. Hidden texts remain unread. Buried structures may still await discovery. Questions about the town's final hours continue to inspire investigation. As Mount Vesuvius watches over the bay and archaeologists continue their careful work beneath its shadow, one cannot help but wonder how many stories remain trapped beneath the stone and ash, waiting for the day they emerge once more into the light. From the volcanic silence of Herculaneum, where unread scrolls may still conceal forgotten knowledge beneath layers of ash and stone, our journey now moves eastward to a landscape that seems equally improbable. Here, there are no towering volcanoes, no dense jungles, and no dramatic mountain valleys. Instead, an ancient city rises from a harsh and arid environment where survival itself appears to have been a challenge. Yet thousands of years ago, a sophisticated civilization not only endured here, it flourished. And among its greatest achievements stands Dholavira, one of the most remarkable and enigmatic cities of the ancient world. Located on Qadir Island within the vast salt flats of the Rann of Kutch in present-day India, Dholavira occupies a landscape unlike almost any other major archaeological site. For much of the year, the surrounding terrain appears stark and unforgiving. Seasonal changes transform the region dramatically, alternating between intense dryness and periods of flooding. Even today, the environment commands respect. Standing amid the ruins, it is difficult not to wonder how an ancient city could thrive in such a place. Yet it did. Founded around 3000 BC and flourishing for well over a millennium, Dholavira was one of the principal urban centers of the Indus Valley civilization, a civilization that stretched across vast regions of South Asia and rivaled the great cultures of Mesopotamia and Egypt in scale and sophistication. What makes Dholavira especially intriguing is that it appears both familiar and mysterious at the same time. Its streets reveal careful planning. Its structures demonstrate advanced engineering. Massive fortifications divide the city into distinct zones. Reservoirs, channels, and water management systems display an extraordinary understanding of environmental challenges. In many respects, the city seems strikingly modern. Yet despite decades of research, fundamental aspects of the civilization that built it remain unknown. The people of Dholavira left behind no deciphered historical records. Like the symbols of the Phaistos disk encountered earlier in our journey, the writing system of the Indus Valley civilization continues to resist interpretation. Thousands of inscriptions have been discovered across the civilization's territory, but none have yet yielded a universally accepted translation. As a result, Dholavira speaks through architecture rather than words. Its walls, streets, reservoirs, and artifacts tell a story, but only partially. One of the site's most famous discoveries is a large inscription composed of 10 symbols, originally mounted above what may have been a gateway. The characters were unusually large, making the sign one of the most prominent examples of Indus script ever found. What did it say? Was it the name of the city? The title of a ruler? A religious statement? A public announcement? No one knows. The inscription remains one of the most tantalizing clues left behind by a civilization whose language has fallen silent. The city's water system presents another mystery. Dholavira's builders created an elaborate network of reservoirs, dams, channels, and storage facilities designed to capture and conserve precious water. Some of these structures are immense. Together, they demonstrate engineering capabilities that continue to impress modern researchers. How did the planners develop such sophisticated techniques? Certainly, practical experience and generations of observation played important roles. Yet the scale and integration of the system suggest an exceptional level of organization. Water was not merely a resource here. It was the foundation upon which the entire city depended. Some scholars believe the management of water may have shaped social, political, and religious life within Dholavira. Control over reservoirs could have influenced authority and status. Ceremonial practices may have been connected to seasonal cycles and the arrival of life-giving rains. But the details remain hidden. Without readable texts, archaeologists are left to interpret patterns preserved within stone and earth. The city's layout raises additional questions. Unlike many ancient settlements that grew organically over time, Dholavira appears highly structured. Distinct sections were separated by walls and carefully organized spaces. Public areas, residential zones, and administrative sectors seem deliberately planned. What social system governed this arrangement? Who made the decisions? And perhaps most surprisingly, where are the obvious signs of royal power? Many ancient cities contain grand palaces, lavish royal tombs, or monumental statues celebrating rulers. Dholavira offers no clear equivalent. The civilization appears highly organized, yet evidence for kings or dynasties remains surprisingly elusive. This absence has fascinated researchers for decades. Was power distributed differently here? Did leadership operate through systems unlike those seen in other ancient civilizations? Or have the relevant clues simply not yet been discovered? The mystery deepens when considering the eventual decline of the city. Around the 2nd millennium BC, Dholavira entered a period of gradual transformation and eventual abandonment. Environmental change is often cited as a major factor. Shifts in river systems, changing rainfall patterns, and broader climatic pressures may have affected the region. Yet the precise sequence of events remains uncertain. Did environmental stress undermine economic stability? Did populations migrate elsewhere? Were political changes involved? The archaeological evidence suggests a complex process rather than a single catastrophic event. As with many ancient mysteries, the answers remain incomplete. This uncertainty has naturally inspired broader speculation. Some researchers have wondered whether Dholavira's achievements indicate forms of knowledge that remain underappreciated today. Its urban planning, water management, and long-distance trade networks suggest a civilization capable of remarkable innovation. Others focus on the undeciphered script. Could the inscriptions preserve historical accounts, scientific observations, religious teachings, or entirely unfamiliar concepts? Might future breakthroughs reveal aspects of the civilization that fundamentally alter our understanding of the ancient world? The possibility remains very real. More speculative theories venture further, suggesting that lost archives or hidden sections of the city may still await discovery beneath layers of sediment. Others argue that Dholavira was part of a broader network of knowledge exchange extending across ancient trade routes far more extensively than currently understood. Mainstream archaeology approaches such ideas cautiously, emphasizing evidence while acknowledging how much remains unknown. And there is indeed much that remains unknown. Every reservoir, every wall, every inscription seems to hint at a larger story just beyond reach. Standing atop the ruins as the sun sinks across the salt flats, the scale of the achievement becomes impossible to ignore. Thousands of years ago, people transformed a challenging environment into a thriving urban center. They engineered systems capable of sustaining life, built monuments that still endure, and developed a script whose meaning has vanished into history. Yet their voices remain silent. Their names are largely unknown. Their beliefs remain uncertain. Their stories survive only in fragments scattered across the landscape. As the desert winds move through the ancient streets and shadows stretch across the reservoirs that once sustained an entire city, Dholavira continues to stand as one of archaeology's most compelling enigmas. It reveals enough to inspire admiration, yet conceals enough to preserve its mystery. And somewhere among its undeciphered symbols and buried structures may still lie answers waiting to emerge. Answers that could illuminate not only the fate of a forgotten city, but the hidden depths of one of humanity's greatest ancient civilizations. From the windswept ruins of Dholavira, where an ancient civilization mastered water, urban planning, and a script that remains unreadable to this day, our journey now carries us farther east, across the Indian Ocean, and into the lush volcanic landscapes of Southeast Asia. Here, another monument rises from the earth with a presence so immense and deliberate that it seems almost impossible. It is not a city, nor a palace, nor a fortress. It is something far more unusual, a mountain transformed into a map of the cosmos. This is Borobudur, one of the greatest archaeological wonders ever constructed, and one of the most intriguing mysteries of the ancient world. At dawn, Borobudur emerges slowly from the mist. The monument stands atop a hill in central Java, surrounded by fertile plains, distant villages, and a ring of volcanic peaks that dominate the horizon. In the early morning light, the structure appears less like a building and more like a natural formation rising from the landscape itself. Layers of stone ascend toward the sky in a series of terraces and platforms, culminating in a crown of bell-shaped stupas that seem suspended between earth and heaven. The setting feels almost unreal. Clouds drift through the surrounding valleys. Tropical forests stretch across the countryside. Volcanoes loom in the distance, reminders of the immense geological forces that have shaped this region for millennia. And at the center of it all stands Borobudur. Constructed during the 8th and 9th centuries A.D. under the Sailendra dynasty, Borobudur is widely recognized as the largest Buddhist monument on Earth. Built from millions of volcanic stone blocks, it consists of 9 stacked platforms decorated with thousands of relief panels and hundreds of Buddha statues. Yet despite its fame, many fundamental questions remain unanswered. Who exactly designed it? How was such a vast project organized? Why was it built in this specific location? And perhaps most mysteriously, why was it eventually abandoned? The monument itself is astonishingly complex. Viewed from above, Borobudur forms a giant mandala, a sacred geometric representation of the universe. Pilgrims traditionally move through the structure by following a prescribed path, ascending level by level while encountering hundreds of narrative reliefs carved into the stone. These carvings tell stories from Buddhist traditions, depicting journeys, moral lessons, celestial beings, and scenes from daily life. The experience was never intended to be merely architectural. It was spiritual. Every step carried symbolic meaning. The lower levels represent the world of desire and attachment. Higher terraces symbolize increasing states of enlightenment. The summit represents transcendence, a realm beyond ordinary existence. In many ways, Borobudur functions as a three-dimensional philosophy rendered in stone. Yet understanding the monument's symbolism is only part of the puzzle. The scale of the project continues to provoke wonder. Millions of stone blocks were quarried, transported, shaped, and assembled with remarkable precision. Complex drainage systems were incorporated into the design to protect the structure from heavy tropical rainfall. Thousands of relief carvings were executed with extraordinary skill. How was such a feat accomplished? Modern researchers generally point to the organizational abilities of the Sailendra rulers, who possessed both the resources and authority necessary to coordinate large-scale construction. But even with this explanation, the achievement remains extraordinary. The builders created one of the most sophisticated monuments in human history without modern machinery, cranes, or industrial technology. The mystery deepens when considering the monument's hidden features. During restoration work in the 19th century, archaeologists discovered something unexpected beneath the visible base of the structure. An entire series of relief panels had been deliberately covered by an additional layer of stone. Today, these concealed carvings are known as the hidden foot of Borobudur. The reliefs depict scenes associated with karma, morality, and the consequences of human actions. They are intricate, detailed, and clearly important. Yet someone intentionally buried them. Why? The most widely accepted explanation is practical. Some researchers believe the additional stone layer was added to stabilize the monument's foundations and prevent structural problems. This may well be true. Yet the decision remains intriguing. If stability was the only concern, why cover such elaborate artwork? Why invest immense effort into creating reliefs that would never be seen? Some scholars suggest that symbolic motivations may have accompanied practical ones. Perhaps the concealed panels represented a stage of spiritual progression meant to remain hidden beneath the monument. Others remain unconvinced. The debate continues. Questions also surround Borobudur's relationship to the surrounding landscape. The monument was not built in isolation. Volcanoes dominate the horizon. Rivers flow through nearby valleys. Mountains frame the region on multiple sides. Some researchers believe the placement of Borobudur reflects deliberate alignment with natural features considered spiritually significant. The landscape itself may have been incorporated into the monument's symbolic design. Was Borobudur intended as a sacred mountain mirroring the cosmic mountain described in Buddhist traditions? Did its builders select the site because of its relationship to nearby peaks and celestial events? Or were practical and symbolic considerations inseparable in the minds of those who planned it? The answers remain uncertain. Perhaps the greatest mystery concerns abandonment. Despite its immense importance, Borobudur eventually fell into obscurity. Historical records provide only limited information about the process. By the time later visitors encountered the site, much of the monument had been reclaimed by vegetation, volcanic deposits, and the passage of time. What happened? Most historians point to a combination of factors. Political centers shifted elsewhere. Religious changes altered the cultural landscape. Volcanic activity may have influenced settlement patterns. Gradually, the monument ceased to function as it once had. Yet the details remain frustratingly incomplete. There is no single dramatic event marking Borobudur's disappearance from active use. Instead, the monument seems to fade slowly from history, as though it were being absorbed back into the landscape that had given birth to it. Centuries later, it would be rediscovered beneath layers of jungle growth and accumulated earth. This rediscovery introduced new mysteries of its own. Many sections of the monument remain difficult to interpret fully. Certain reliefs depict scenes whose meanings are debated. Some architectural choices appear unusual even within the context of Buddhist traditions. And despite extensive research, the identities of many individuals involved in its construction remain unknown. The builders created a masterpiece, yet history preserved remarkably little information about them. As with many extraordinary archaeological sites, Borobudur has inspired more speculative theories. Some researchers have wondered whether aspects of its design encode astronomical knowledge. The monument's geometry, proportions, and orientation have attracted attention from scholars interested in sacred mathematics and symbolic architecture. Others focus on the monument's resemblance to a giant mandala, visible only from above. How did ancient builders conceptualize such a design without modern aerial perspectives? Most archaeologists argue that geometric planning techniques and sophisticated architectural traditions are sufficient to explain the achievement. Yet the question continues to fascinate observers. More unconventional theories venture further, suggesting hidden chambers beneath the monument or undiscovered symbolic systems embedded within its architecture. Some propose that portions of Borobudur's deeper meaning remain inaccessible because modern observers no longer possess the cultural framework necessary to interpret it fully. While such ideas remain speculative, they highlight a broader truth. Borobudur is not merely a structure. It is a message encoded in stone, symbolism, geometry, and ritual movement. And like many ancient messages, parts of it may no longer be readable. Standing at the summit as dawn breaks over the Javanese landscape, one can watch sunlight gradually illuminate the surrounding stupas. Mist drifts across the plains below. Volcanoes emerge from the darkness. Birds circle above the monument's highest terraces. For a moment, the modern world seems distant. The silence feels ancient, and it becomes easier to imagine generations of pilgrims ascending these same pathways, following the same symbolic journey toward enlightenment. What did Borobudur truly mean to those who built it? Why were certain features concealed? What knowledge guided its design? And how much of its original significance has been lost through the centuries? The monument offers clues, but not complete answers. Its stones remain in place. Its carvings continue to tell their stories. Yet somewhere within its hidden symbolism, forgotten history, and unexplained design choices, Borobudur still guards secrets of its own. As the morning sun climbs higher above the volcanic horizon and shadows retreat from the ancient terraces, the monument remains what it has always been, a masterpiece of human imagination and a mystery that has not yet surrendered all of its truths. From the towering terraces of Borobudur, where stone pathways guided pilgrims through a symbolic journey toward enlightenment, our exploration now crosses oceans once again. We leave behind the volcanic landscapes of Southeast Asia and travel to the broad river valleys of North America. Here, beneath open skies and rolling fields, another mystery rises from the earth itself. Unlike the massive stone monuments of Borobudur, these structures were built from soil, clay, and human determination. Yet their purpose, their symbolism, and the society that created them remain subjects of fascination and debate. This is Moundville, one of the most remarkable archaeological sites in North America, and a place where ancient earthworks continue to guard their secrets. At first glance, the landscape appears peaceful. The Black Warrior River flows quietly through the countryside of present-day Alabama. Gentle hills rise beyond the floodplain. Birds circle overhead, and the wind moves softly across the grass. Scattered across this tranquil setting are large, flat-topped earthen mounds arranged around a central plaza. Today, the mounds seem almost natural, as though they have always belonged to the landscape. but they are entirely human creations. Each mound represents countless hours of labor. Basket by basket, generations of people transported soil from surrounding areas, gradually building monumental platforms that transformed the natural terrain into a carefully designed ceremonial center. Between approximately AD 1000 and 1450, Moundville flourished as one of the largest and most influential settlements of what archaeologists call the Mississippian culture. At its height, it was a major political, religious, and economic center, drawing people from across a vast region. Yet despite decades of research, many aspects of Moundville remain mysterious. Who exactly governed this place? What ceremonies took place atop the mounds? Why was so much effort devoted to reshaping the landscape? And perhaps most intriguingly, why was the site eventually abandoned? The layout of Moundville immediately suggests deliberate planning. More than 24 mounds surround a large rectangular plaza. The arrangement is far too precise to be accidental. Certain mounds occupy particularly prominent positions, while others appear carefully integrated into the broader design. Archaeologists believe many of these mounds supported important structures. Temples, elite residences, administrative buildings, and ceremonial spaces may once have stood atop the elevated platforms. But the exact functions of individual mounds are not always clear. Some appear associated with political authority. Others seem connected to ritual activities. Still others may have served multiple purposes throughout different periods of the site's history. The uncertainty reflects a larger challenge. Unlike civilizations that left extensive written records, the people of Moundville communicated primarily through material culture, oral traditions, and symbolic expression. Their stories were not preserved in books or inscriptions. Instead, fragments of their worldview survive through artifacts, architecture, and the arrangement of the landscape itself. One of the most intriguing aspects of Moundville involves its artistic tradition. Excavations have uncovered remarkable objects crafted from copper, shell, stone, and clay. Many feature highly symbolic imagery: birds of prey, serpents, human figures, celestial motifs, and hybrid beings that combine human and animal characteristics. These images appear repeatedly across Mississippian sites throughout North America. Yet their precise meanings remain uncertain. Some researchers interpret them as representations of spiritual forces or mythological beings. Others believe they reflect a complex cosmology linking the sky, the earth, and an underworld inhabited by powerful entities. Certain symbols seem to recur with remarkable consistency. Bird imagery, for example, appears associated with the upper world and celestial power. Serpentine forms are often linked to water, transformation, and forces beneath the earth. Human figures sometimes appear in ceremonial contexts that suggest ritual significance. Together, these symbols hint at a rich intellectual and spiritual tradition. But much of that tradition remains beyond direct observation. The people who understood these symbols left no written explanations behind. As a result, researchers must interpret patterns that survive only in fragments. The mounds themselves contribute to the mystery. Many scholars believe their placement reflects more than practical concerns. Some alignments appear connected to astronomical events. The movement of the sun throughout the year may have influenced aspects of the site's design. Ceremonial activities could have been timed according to seasonal cycles, reinforcing connections between political authority, agriculture, and cosmic order. This possibility places Moundville alongside many ancient ceremonial centers around the world. From Uaxactun's astronomical alignments to Borobudur's symbolic geometry, human societies repeatedly sought ways to connect architecture with larger patterns in the universe. Did Moundville serve a similar purpose? The evidence suggests it may have, yet the details remain elusive. Another mystery concerns the site's role within the broader Mississippian world. Moundville was not isolated. Trade networks connected it to distant regions. Marine shells from coastal areas, copper from northern territories, and other exotic materials found their way into the settlement. Ideas, symbols, and technologies appear to have traveled alongside goods. How extensive were these connections? How were they maintained? And what role did Moundville play within this network of exchange? Some researchers view the site as a powerful regional center capable of influencing communities across a large geographic area. Others emphasize cooperation and shared cultural traditions rather than centralized authority. The archaeological evidence supports elements of both perspectives. This ambiguity contributes to the site's enduring fascination. The mystery deepens when considering burial practices. Excavations have revealed significant differences in how individuals were interred. Some graves contain elaborate offerings and valuable artifacts. Others are comparatively modest. These patterns suggest social distinctions existed within the community. Yet the exact nature of those distinctions remains uncertain. Were certain individuals political leaders, religious specialists, members of influential families, or did status derive from more complex factors now difficult to reconstruct? The answers remain hidden within incomplete evidence. Perhaps the most puzzling question of all concerns Moundville's decline. By the 15th century, the site experienced significant changes. Population levels appear to have decreased. Certain ceremonial activities diminished. Eventually, Moundville ceased functioning as the major center it had once been. Why? Environmental pressures have been proposed as one possibility. Changes in agriculture, resource availability, or climate may have affected the region. Political fragmentation offers another explanation. Alliances may have shifted. New centers of influence could have emerged elsewhere. Social and religious transformations may also have played a role. The reality was likely complex, yet no single explanation has achieved universal acceptance. As with many ancient mysteries, certainty remains elusive. The unanswered questions surrounding Moundville have naturally inspired more speculative interpretations. Some researchers have wondered whether the site's layout encodes a cosmological model more sophisticated than currently understood. The arrangement of mounds, plazas, and ceremonial spaces may reflect symbolic principles that have only partially survived in the archaeological record. Others focus on recurring motifs found throughout Mississippian art. Could these symbols preserve fragments of a belief system far more detailed than researchers currently recognize? Might they represent stories, teachings, or sacred knowledge transmitted orally across generations? Without written records, such possibilities are difficult to evaluate fully. More unconventional theories occasionally venture further, proposing hidden astronomical functions or forgotten systems of knowledge embedded within the landscape itself. Mainstream archaeology generally approaches such ideas cautiously, emphasizing evidence while acknowledging how much remains unknown. And there is indeed much that remains unknown. The earthworks reveal remarkable organizational skill. The artifacts demonstrate artistic sophistication. The site's scale suggests considerable social complexity. Yet the inner world of the people who built Moundville remains frustratingly difficult to reconstruct. Standing today within the vast central plaza, surrounded by silent mounds rising against the horizon, it is easy to imagine ceremonies unfolding centuries ago. Crowds gathering beneath open skies, leaders ascending earthen platforms, rituals connecting communities to forces they believed shaped the universe. The physical traces remain. The meanings are less certain. Every mound, every artifact, and every alignment offers clues, but never the complete story. Somewhere beneath the grass-covered earthworks, within unexcavated areas or overlooked details, there may still be evidence capable of transforming our understanding of this remarkable place. As evening shadows lengthen across the plaza and the river continues its slow journey through the landscape, Moundville remains suspended between history and mystery. It stands as proof of a sophisticated civilization that reshaped the land on a monumental scale, yet whose deepest beliefs and motivations remain partially hidden. From the earthen mounds of North America, where ancient builders reshaped entire landscapes according to beliefs now only partially understood, our journey moves south once more, climbing into the towering Andes Mountains of Peru. Here, among windswept hills and high-altitude valleys, another mystery waits in stone and water. Unlike the monumental plazas of Moundville or the symbolic terraces of Borobudur, this site seems almost deceptively simple at first glance. Yet beneath its elegant design lies a puzzle that has challenged archaeologists, engineers, and historians for generations. This is Tambomachay, a place where flowing water may hold the key to understanding a vanished world. A few kilometers outside the ancient Inca capital of Cusco, Tambomachay emerges from the mountainside like a carefully crafted sanctuary. The air is cool and thin at this elevation. Grasses ripple in the wind. Clouds drift across the rugged peaks that surround the valley. Amid this dramatic landscape stands a series of finely cut stone terraces, walls, channels, and fountains. Water flows continuously through the site. It has flowed here for centuries. Crystal-clear streams emerge from hidden conduits within the stonework, cascading into carefully designed basins before continuing their journey down the mountainside. The sound is constant and soothing, echoing softly through the ruins. Even today, the engineering appears remarkable. The water emerges with such precision that it often seems almost magical, and that precision is where the mystery begins. Tambomachay is generally believed to have been constructed during the height of the Inca Empire in the 15th century. The site is famous for its exquisite masonry, a hallmark of Inca architecture. Massive stones fit together with extraordinary accuracy, requiring no mortar to hold them in place. But unlike many Inca sites that clearly served defensive, residential, or administrative purposes, Tambomachay remains difficult to define. What exactly was it? Most archaeologists refer to it as a ceremonial site associated with water. This interpretation is supported by both the architecture and the central role that water played within Inca religious thought. For the Inca, water was far more than a practical resource. It was sacred. Springs, rivers, lakes, and mountain waters were often connected to spiritual forces believed to shape both the natural world and human existence. Water represented life, fertility, renewal, and divine power. In this context, Tambomachay's elaborate fountains seem to suggest ritual significance. Yet the details remain uncertain. Was it primarily a religious sanctuary? A royal retreat? A ceremonial bathing complex? Or perhaps something that combined all of these functions? The evidence points in multiple directions. One of the site's most fascinating features is its hydraulic system. The water channels appear deceptively simple. Yet closer examination reveals a sophisticated understanding of engineering and landscape management. The flow remains remarkably consistent despite centuries of exposure to natural forces. The builders carefully controlled gradients, pressure, and distribution. Water emerges from hidden sources and travels through channels with astonishing precision. Perhaps the most famous feature involves two streams of water that flow side by side from stone openings. Visitors often notice that these streams appear nearly identical in volume and speed. How did Inca engineers achieve such balance? Modern studies suggest that careful planning and detailed knowledge of hydraulic principles made it possible. Yet the execution remains deeply impressive. The more researchers study the site, the more questions arise. Where exactly does the water originate? How much of the system remains hidden beneath the surface? And how did the builders maintain such accuracy without modern surveying equipment? The answers reveal extraordinary skill, but not necessarily the full story. The location of Tambomachay adds another layer of intrigue. The site occupies a strategic position within a landscape rich in ceremonial and political significance. Nearby are other important Inca sites, including fortifications, roads, and religious centers connected to Cusco. Some researchers believe Tambomachay formed part of a larger sacred network integrated into the geography surrounding the imperial capital. In this interpretation, the site was not intended to stand alone. Instead, it functioned as one component within a carefully organized ceremonial landscape where mountains, springs, pathways, and monuments were linked through shared symbolic meaning. If this is true, then understanding Tambomachay requires understanding its relationship to the wider environment. The mountains themselves may have been as important as the structures built upon them. In Inca belief, certain peaks were regarded as powerful sacred beings. Known as apus, these mountains were thought to possess spiritual significance and influence over the surrounding world. Could Tambomachay have been positioned to honor such forces? Many scholars believe so. Yet exactly how these relationships were understood remains uncertain. The mystery deepens when considering the absence of detailed written explanations. Unlike some ancient civilizations, the Inca left no extensive surviving written texts describing the purpose of individual monuments. Much of what is known comes from archaeology, oral traditions, and accounts recorded after the arrival of Europeans. These sources provide valuable information, but they do not answer every question. As a result, Tambomachay remains partially hidden behind a veil of interpretation. Its stones speak, its water flows, but its complete story remains elusive. Over the years, researchers have proposed various theories regarding its purpose. The most widely accepted interpretation views Tambomachay as a ceremonial center dedicated to water worship and ritual purification. In this scenario, the fountains played a central role in religious practices connected to fertility, renewal, and the sacred landscape. Others suggest the site may have served as a royal retreat for Inca rulers. Its peaceful location, elegant architecture, and reliable water supply would have made it an attractive place for rest, ceremony, and political gatherings. Some historians see no contradiction between these possibilities. For the Inca, royal authority and religious symbolism were often deeply intertwined. A sacred sanctuary could simultaneously function as a place of governance, ritual, and recreation. Yet even these interpretations leave important questions unanswered. Why was so much effort invested in perfecting the hydraulic system? Were certain ceremonies linked to specific times of year? Did the movement of water carry symbolic meanings now lost to history? And what activities unfolded here that left little trace in the archaeological record? As with many ancient sites, the gaps in knowledge have encouraged more speculative ideas. Some researchers have explored the possibility that Tambomachay possessed astronomical significance in addition to its hydraulic functions. Certain alignments within the broader landscape may have connected the site to seasonal observations or ceremonial calendars. Others focus on the extraordinary precision of the water system itself. Could there be hidden components still buried beneath the earth? Might undiscovered channels or reservoirs exist beyond the visible structures? The mountainous terrain makes such possibilities difficult to dismiss entirely. More unconventional theories occasionally suggest that Tambomachay preserved specialized engineering knowledge that has yet to be fully appreciated. Proponents point to the enduring functionality of the fountains and the sophistication of the design as evidence that the builders possessed a deeper understanding of hydraulics than is often assumed. Mainstream archaeology generally attributes these achievements to centuries of accumulated experience and practical expertise. Yet even within conventional interpretations, admiration for the builders is unavoidable. The system continues to function after hundreds of years. That fact alone is remarkable. Standing before the fountains today, it is easy to become captivated by the sound of flowing water. The streams emerge silently from stone openings, just as they did centuries ago. The mountains rise beyond the terraces. Clouds cast moving shadows across the landscape. The scene feels timeless, and perhaps that timeless quality is part of what makes Tambomachay so mysterious. Unlike abandoned cities buried beneath jungles or volcanic ash, this site remains animated by the very element that defined it. Water still moves through its channels. The monument continues to perform its intended function, even though the people who built it are long gone. What ceremonies once unfolded beside these fountains? What meanings were attached to the flowing streams? Why was this particular place chosen among the countless valleys and mountains of the Andes? The answers remain uncertain. As the water continues its endless journey through ancient stone and disappears into the landscape below, Tambomachay offers a glimpse of a world that can still be seen, heard, and touched, but never fully understood. Somewhere within the sound of those flowing waters, among hidden channels and forgotten rituals, a portion of its story remains untold, waiting for future discoveries to reveal what has been concealed for centuries in the shadows of the Andes. From the flowing waters of Tambomachay, where ancient engineers channeled mountain springs through stone with astonishing precision, our journey now crosses continents once again. We leave the high Andes behind and travel to the heart of ancient Anatolia, where a solitary mound rises above a broad landscape of rolling plains and distant hills. At first glance, it appears to be little more than a massive earthen hill. Yet hidden within this artificial mountain lies one of the most remarkable tombs ever discovered, a burial chamber connected to legends that have echoed through history for nearly 3,000 years. This is Midas Mound, a monument where archaeology and myth meet in ways that continue to raise profound questions. The mound dominates the landscape. Located at Gordion, the ancient capital of the Phrygian kingdom in present-day Turkey, Midas Mound rises dramatically above the surrounding terrain. Its immense bulk is impossible to ignore. Even today, standing at its base, one gains a sense of the extraordinary effort required to create it. The structure measures hundreds of meters across and towers above the plains like a man-made hill. For centuries, local traditions associated the mound with one of antiquity's most famous rulers, King Midas. The name immediately evokes legend. According to ancient Greek stories, Midas possessed the miraculous and ultimately disastrous ability to turn everything he touched into gold. The tale has endured for thousands of years, becoming one of the best-known myths of the ancient world. Yet behind the legend stood a real kingdom. The Phrygians were a powerful people who flourished in Anatolia during the early 1st millennium BC. Their capital at Gordion became an important center of trade, politics, and culture. Historical records suggest that a ruler named Midas likely existed, though the historical figure and the legendary king are not necessarily identical. This distinction lies at the heart of the mystery. Where does history end and myth begin? The mound itself offers intriguing clues. When archaeologists excavated the monument in the 20th century, they discovered a remarkably preserved burial chamber hidden deep within its core. Constructed from massive timbers, the chamber had survived for nearly 3,000 years beneath the enormous weight of the earth above it. The discovery was extraordinary. The wooden structure remains one of the oldest surviving large-scale wooden buildings ever found. Inside, archaeologists uncovered the remains of an elderly man accompanied by a rich collection of grave goods. Elaborate furniture, bronze vessels, ceremonial objects, and evidence of a lavish funerary feast surrounded the burial. The scale of the tomb immediately suggested a person of immense importance. But was it Midas himself? Surprisingly, scientific analysis complicated the story. Studies indicated that the individual buried within the mound likely died around 740 BC, several decades before the period traditionally associated with the historical King Midas. This finding led many researchers to propose a different interpretation. Rather than Midas, the tomb may belong to his father or another prominent member of the royal family. The possibility is fascinating. If true, The mound may preserve the burial of a ruler who helped establish the foundations of Phrygian power before Midas himself rose to prominence. Yet certainty remains elusive. No inscription identifies the deceased. No definitive evidence settles the question. The individual buried within the chamber remains anonymous, his identity concealed by the passage of time. This uncertainty only deepens the site's appeal. The mystery extends beyond the identity of the occupant. The engineering required to construct the mound was extraordinary. Thousands of workers would have been needed to gather and transport the immense quantities of soil and stone required to create such a monument. Why invest so much effort in a single tomb? The answer likely involves more than simple commemoration. Across many ancient cultures, monumental burials served political and symbolic purposes. They demonstrated power, reinforced legitimacy, and connected rulers to spiritual beliefs about death and the afterlife. Midas Mound may have functioned in a similar way, yet the exact beliefs that inspired its construction remain only partially understood. The Phrygians left behind inscriptions and artifacts, but not enough to fully reconstruct their worldview. As a result, archaeologists are often left interpreting fragments. One particularly intriguing aspect of the burial concerns the funerary feast. Analysis of residues found within bronze vessels revealed traces of food and drink consumed during ceremonial activities associated with the burial. Researchers identified evidence of a complex beverage created from ingredients including wine, honey, and barley. This discovery offers a rare glimpse into ancient ritual practices. For a brief moment, it becomes possible to imagine mourners gathering around the tomb, sharing food and drink as part of ceremonies intended to honor the deceased. Yet even these details raise new questions. What meanings did these rituals carry? What beliefs guided the participants? And what did they hope would happen to the ruler after death? The answers remain uncertain. The broader city of Gordion introduces additional mysteries. Perhaps best known is its association with the famous Gordian knot. According to ancient tradition, an intricate knot tied within the city was linked to a prophecy stating that whoever unraveled it would rule Asia. Centuries later, Alexander the Great supposedly solved the challenge by cutting through the knot with his sword. Whether the story is entirely historical remains debated, yet its connection to Gordion contributes to the site's aura of mystery. The city appears repeatedly in accounts where legend and history intertwine. Midas Mound occupies a similar space. It is unquestionably real. Its burial chamber exists. Its artifacts can be studied. Its construction can be measured. And yet the monument remains surrounded by stories that blur the boundaries between fact and myth. Over time, researchers have attempted to understand what made Phrygia such an influential culture. The kingdom occupied a strategic position between different regions of the ancient world. Trade routes crossed its territory. Ideas flowed through its cities. Artistic traditions reveal connections to neighboring civilizations while maintaining distinctive local characteristics. Yet despite its importance, much about Phrygian society remains obscure. Compared to Egypt, Mesopotamia, or Greece, the surviving evidence is limited. Many aspects of daily life, religion, and political organization remain difficult to reconstruct. This lack of information creates fertile ground for speculation. Some researchers have wondered whether unexcavated portions of Gordion still conceal significant discoveries. Numerous mounds remain scattered throughout the landscape, many of them only partially explored. Could additional royal tombs await discovery? Might future excavations reveal inscriptions capable of identifying the occupants of these monuments? The possibility remains very real. More speculative theories focus on the legends themselves. Some suggest that stories surrounding Midas preserve distant memories of genuine historical events transformed over centuries through oral tradition. The tale of the Golden Touch, for example, may symbolize extraordinary wealth rather than a literal supernatural ability. Others point to the kingdom's prosperity and strategic importance as possible origins for the enduring fascination with its rulers. Mainstream historians generally view such legends as complex mixtures of history, symbolism, and mythology. Yet even they acknowledge that myths often contain fragments of forgotten realities. Perhaps the most compelling aspect of Midas Mound is the way it forces us to confront the limits of historical knowledge. The mound appears solid and permanent. The burial chamber has survived nearly 3 millennia. Artifacts remain where they were placed by ancient hands. And yet the identity of the person at the center of it all remains uncertain. His name may have been known to thousands during his lifetime. Today, it is lost. Standing atop the mound as evening shadows stretch across the Anatolian plain, it becomes easier to understand why this place continues to inspire wonder. The wind moves across the grass. The ancient city lies nearby. Distant hills fade into the horizon. Beneath your feet rests a ruler whose funeral required one of the largest burial monuments of the ancient world. Yet who exactly he was, what he believed, and how he wished to be remembered remain mysteries. The mound preserves evidence, but not complete answers. It stands as a monument to both remembrance and forgetting, a structure built to ensure immortality, yet one that ultimately concealed the identity of its occupant behind layers of earth, legend, and time. And somewhere within the silent chamber at its heart, surrounded by the remnants of ceremonies performed nearly 3,000 years ago, there may still linger clues capable of revealing truths that have remained hidden since the Age of Kings. From the great burial mound of Gordian, where the boundary between history and legend blurs beneath layers of earth and memory, our journey now returns to the Mediterranean. Here, on an island surrounded by deep blue seas and ancient trade routes, lies a site that may have inspired one of the most enduring myths ever told. It is a place of grand staircases, hidden chambers, colorful frescoes, and unexplained symbols. A place so complex that early visitors struggled to believe it had been built by ordinary human hands. This is Knossos, the heart of the Minoan civilization, and one of archaeology's most fascinating mysteries. The ruins spread across a low hill on the island of Crete. At first glance, Knossos appears unlike most ancient sites. There are no colossal pyramids dominating the horizon. No towering defensive walls encircle the settlement. Instead, visitors encounter a maze of corridors, courtyards, staircases, storage rooms, workshops, and ceremonial spaces woven together into an intricate architectural puzzle. Even today, it is easy to become disoriented. Passages lead unexpectedly into open courts. Stairways descend into shadowed chambers before emerging into sunlit spaces. Rooms connect in ways that seem almost deliberately confusing. Standing within the ruins, one begins to understand why ancient storytellers may have imagined a labyrinth. According to Greek mythology, Crete was home to the legendary labyrinth, an impossible maze built to contain the Minotaur, a creature half man and half bull. Deep within its twisting corridors, the beast supposedly waited for unfortunate victims sent as tribute from distant lands. The story is famous. But could there be a connection between myth and reality? Many researchers believe the immense complexity of Knossos may have contributed to the origins of the legend. The palace is so vast and intricate that early visitors could easily have viewed it as a maze beyond comprehension. Yet this is only the beginning of the mystery. Knossos was the largest center of the Minoan civilization, a sophisticated Bronze Age culture that flourished on Crete between roughly 3000 BC and 1450 BC. Long before the rise of classical Greece, the Minoans established thriving cities, extensive trade networks, advanced craftsmanship, and monumental architecture. For centuries, however, their civilization was forgotten. Its cities disappeared beneath layers of earth and memory. Its language became unreadable. Its history faded into myth. Only in the early 20th century did large-scale excavations begin revealing the extraordinary world that had once existed here. What emerged surprised everyone. The palace complex covered an enormous area and featured architectural innovations far ahead of their time. Multi-story buildings, sophisticated drainage systems, carefully designed ventilation, and elaborate decorative programs suggested a society of remarkable sophistication. The Minoans appeared prosperous, artistic, and deeply connected to the wider Mediterranean world. Yet many fundamental questions remain unanswered. One of the most intriguing mysteries concerns the palace itself. Was Knossos truly a palace in the conventional sense? The term is widely used, but some scholars argue that it may not fully capture the site's purpose. Certainly, the complex appears to have served administrative functions. Storage magazines held enormous quantities of goods. Workshops produced valuable items. Ceremonial spaces indicate religious activity. But Knossos may have been much more than a royal residence. It could have functioned simultaneously as a political center, religious sanctuary, economic hub, and ceremonial gathering place. If so, how was power organized within such a system? Who governed the Minoan world? The answers remain surprisingly unclear. Unlike many ancient civilizations, the Minoans left behind few obvious depictions of powerful rulers. Monumental statues of kings are absent. Royal tombs remain difficult to identify with certainty. This has led some researchers to propose that authority may have operated differently here than in other Bronze Age societies. Others caution that evidence may simply be incomplete. Either way, the question remains open. The mystery deepens when we turn to writing. Among the most important discoveries at Knossos were clay tablets inscribed with scripts now known as Linear A and Linear B. Linear B was eventually deciphered in the 20th century and revealed an early form of Greek. Through it, researchers gained valuable insight into the later administration of the palace. But Linear A remains undeciphered. Despite decades of effort, no universally accepted translation exists. This means that much of the Minoan civilization still speaks in a language we cannot understand. What stories are hidden within those symbols? What names, beliefs, records, or histories remain locked inside the inscriptions? The possibility that entire chapters of ancient history remain unreadable is one of the most compelling mysteries associated with Knossos. Every undeciphered sign represents knowledge just beyond reach. Then there are the frescoes. Brightly colored paintings once decorated walls throughout the complex. They depict dolphins swimming through clear waters, acrobats leaping over bulls, elegant figures participating in ceremonies, and scenes filled with movement and vitality. The images seem strikingly different from the militaristic art often associated with other ancient powers. They portray a world that appears vibrant and sophisticated, yet interpretation remains difficult. Do these scenes represent daily life? Religious rituals? Symbolic narratives? Some images seem straightforward. Others remain deeply enigmatic. Bull imagery appears repeatedly throughout the site, raising further questions. The bull clearly held profound significance in Minoan culture. Bull-leaping scenes occur frequently in artistic representations. Horn-shaped symbols appear throughout Minoan architecture. Why were bulls so important? Were they connected to religious beliefs, political authority, cosmological ideas? The answers remain uncertain, and once again, myth lingers nearby. The legend of the Minotaur may preserve distorted memories of ancient rituals whose original meanings have long been forgotten. Perhaps the greatest mystery surrounding Knossos concerns the fate of the civilization itself. Around the middle of the 2nd millennium BC, dramatic changes swept across the region. Some researchers point to the eruption of Thera, one of the largest volcanic events in recorded human history. The eruption devastated nearby areas and may have generated tsunamis that affected coastal settlements throughout the Aegean. Did this catastrophe weaken Minoan society? Many scholars believe it played an important role, yet evidence suggests the story is more complex. Knossos continued to function after the eruption. Life did not end immediately. Instead, the civilization appears to have experienced a gradual transformation, followed by eventual decline. Why? Were environmental disruptions responsible? Economic changes? Foreign invasions? Internal political struggles? Perhaps some combination of all these factors? The archaeological record offers clues but no definitive answer. The uncertainty has inspired numerous theories. Some researchers suggest that outside powers gradually gained influence over Crete, eventually absorbing aspects of Minoan culture into emerging Greek societies. Others emphasize environmental pressures and shifting trade networks. Still others focus on the possibility that multiple crises unfolded simultaneously. As with many ancient mysteries, reality may have been more complicated than any single explanation allows. Knossos has also attracted more speculative interpretations. Its sophisticated architecture, undeciphered writing, and apparent connection to enduring myths have encouraged theories ranging from hidden astronomical knowledge to forgotten religious traditions, whose full significance remains unknown. Some researchers note intriguing alignments within the palace complex and wonder whether celestial observations played a greater role than previously recognized. Others suggest that the symbolic language embedded within Minoan art contains meanings that modern observers have only partially understood. Mainstream archaeology approaches such ideas cautiously, yet acknowledges that much remains uncertain. The civilization left extraordinary evidence behind, but not complete explanations. Standing in the central court as the afternoon sun illuminates the ancient stones, one can almost imagine the palace alive once more. Merchants arriving from distant ports, artisans shaping precious materials, priests conducting ceremonies, administrators recording transactions in scripts that no one today can fully read. The echoes of that world remain everywhere, yet its voice is incomplete. The labyrinth may never have existed exactly as the myths describe. The Minotaur may belong to legend rather than history, and yet something about Knossos continues to blur those boundaries. The site feels simultaneously familiar and mysterious, revealing enough to inspire understanding while concealing enough to preserve wonder. As shadows lengthen across the courtyards and the Mediterranean breeze moves through the ruins, Knossos remains one of archaeology's greatest enigmas. Beneath its stairways, within its undeciphered inscriptions, and behind the stories that have surrounded it for thousands of years, there may still be secrets waiting to emerge. And perhaps somewhere within that ancient maze of stone and memory lies an answer to a question we have not yet learned how to ask. From the labyrinthine corridors of Knossos, where myth and history intertwine among undeciphered symbols and fading frescoes, our journey now moves across the Aegean Sea to the rugged southwestern coast of Greece. Here, overlooking rolling hills and distant waters, another Bronze Age palace rests in silence. Unlike Knossos, whose mysteries are wrapped in legend, this site offers something rarer, a direct voice from the ancient world. Yet even with written records and remarkable archaeological discoveries, many of its greatest secrets remain unresolved. This is the palace of Nestor at Pylos, a place where history appears tantalizingly close, yet never fully reveals itself. The landscape is peaceful. Olive groves stretch across the hills. The Mediterranean sun casts warm light across the countryside. In the distance, the sea glimmers beneath the horizon. Perched atop a hill overlooking this fertile region are the remains of a palace that once stood at the center of a powerful Mycenaean kingdom. Today, only foundations, walls, and scattered fragments remain. But nearly 3,500 years ago, this was one of the most important centers in the Greek Bronze Age. The palace was constructed around the 13th century BC and served as a major administrative, political, and economic hub. It belonged to the Mycenaean civilization, a culture that dominated much of mainland Greece during the Late Bronze Age. The site became known as the Palace of Nestor because of its association with the legendary king described in the epic poems later attributed to Homer. According to tradition, Nestor was a wise and respected ruler who participated in the events surrounding the Trojan War. But was the palace truly connected to him? That question remains one of the first mysteries visitors encounter. The name Palace of Nestor is convenient and evocative, but archaeology cannot definitively confirm that the historical occupant was the same figure preserved in later legend. Like so many ancient sites, Pylos occupies a fascinating space between documented history and enduring myth. The palace itself was remarkably sophisticated. Excavations have revealed large reception halls, storage rooms, workshops, courtyards, and administrative offices arranged around a central complex. Colorful wall paintings once decorated the interiors. Elaborate pottery-filled storerooms. Skilled artisans worked with metals, textiles, and other valuable materials. The structure reflected an organized and prosperous society. Yet what makes Pylos particularly important is not merely its architecture. It is what archaeologists discovered inside. During excavations in 1939, researchers uncovered hundreds of clay tablets preserved by an unexpected catastrophe. Normally, such tablets would have disintegrated over time because they were not intentionally fired. They were simply administrative records written on damp clay. But when the palace was destroyed by fire, intense heat accidentally baked the tablets, preserving them for thousands of years. This disaster transformed a moment of destruction into an extraordinary archaeological archive. The tablets were written in Linear B. Unlike the mysterious Linear A found at Knossos, Linear B was eventually deciphered in the 20th century. The breakthrough revealed that the script represented an early form of Greek. For the first time, scholars could directly read records created by people who lived in the Bronze Age. The discovery was revolutionary. Suddenly, the palace was no longer silent. Its administrators had left behind inventories, tax records, personnel lists, religious offerings, and logistical documents. Through these records, researchers gained unprecedented insight into the functioning of Mycenaean society. And yet, paradoxically, the more information that emerged, the more questions appeared. The tablets reveal astonishing organizational complexity. Officials tracked livestock, agricultural production, bronze supplies, textiles, and labor obligations with remarkable precision. The palace controlled vast resources and coordinated activities across a substantial territory. But how exactly did this system operate? How centralized was power? How much authority rested with the ruler, and how much was distributed among local elites? The surviving records provide clues, but not complete answers. Even more intriguing are the references to religious practices. The tablets mention offerings made to various deities, some of whom would later become familiar figures in Greek mythology. This suggests remarkable continuity between the Bronze Age and later Greek religious traditions. Yet the details remain incomplete. What ceremonies were conducted within the palace? What beliefs shaped the daily lives of its inhabitants? How different were their spiritual practices from those described centuries later? The evidence hints at answers while withholding certainty. The palace's destruction introduces another layer of mystery. At some point around 1200 BC, disaster struck. A fire swept through the complex. Walls collapsed. Rooms were abandoned. Administrative activity ceased. The kingdom disappeared from history. The timing places Pylos within one of the most puzzling periods in ancient history, the Late Bronze Age collapse. Across the eastern Mediterranean, powerful civilizations experienced dramatic upheaval. Kingdoms fell. Trade networks fractured. Cities were destroyed or abandoned. For generations, historians have debated the causes. Were invading groups responsible? Did climate change trigger widespread instability? Were earthquakes, famine, political unrest, or economic disruptions involved. Perhaps several factors combined into a cascading crisis. Pylos stands directly at the center of this larger mystery. The palace tablets provide a fascinating glimpse into the final days before destruction. Some documents appear to record defensive preparations. References to coastal monitoring and military concerns have led researchers to wonder whether officials anticipated danger. If so, what threat were they expecting? An invasion? Piracy? Regional conflict? The evidence is suggestive but inconclusive. The palace seems to have sensed trouble approaching. Yet whatever happened ultimately overwhelmed the system. The fire that destroyed the palace also preserved its records. Without that catastrophe, we might know far less about Mycenaean civilization today. And yet the event itself remains poorly understood. Who attacked? If there was an attack at all, why did recovery never occur? Why was the palace abandoned rather than rebuilt? These questions remain unanswered. The mystery deepens when considering the wider landscape. The kingdom governed from Pylos was extensive and prosperous. Archaeological evidence suggests active trade connections throughout the Mediterranean world. Goods, ideas, and technologies flowed between distant regions. Yet despite these advantages, the system proved vulnerable. Something changed. Something significant enough to erase centuries of political and administrative organization. The archaeological record captures only fragments of that transformation. Among the most intriguing discoveries associated with the region is the so-called Griffin Warrior Tomb, found near Pylos in 2015. The burial contained extraordinary artifacts, including finely crafted weapons, jewelry, and artworks displaying remarkable craftsmanship. The richness of the tomb astonished researchers. It demonstrated that the area possessed considerable wealth and international connections even before the palace reached its height. But the discovery also raised new questions. Who was the individual buried there? What role did he play in the emergence of Mycenaean power? How many other important figures remain undiscovered beneath the surrounding landscape? The possibility of hidden burials and unexplored structures continues to intrigue archaeologists. More speculative theories focus on the palace's relationship to later Greek legends. Could stories preserved in epic poetry contain distant memories of real events from the Bronze Age? Might figures like Nestor represent historical rulers whose deeds were gradually transformed through centuries of oral tradition? Many scholars believe at least some historical memories survived in altered form. Yet separating fact from embellishment remains extraordinarily difficult. The centuries between the fall of the Mycenaean world and the recording of those stories created ample opportunity for transformation. Still, the parallels remain fascinating. The palace feels strangely familiar because echoes of its world survived in legend long after the kingdom itself vanished. Standing within the ruins today, it is possible to imagine scribes recording inventories on clay tablets, officials discussing shipments of bronze, priests preparing offerings, messengers arriving with news from distant territories. The administrative machinery of an entire kingdom once operated here. Then, almost suddenly, it stopped. The voices preserved on the tablets continue speaking across 3,000 years, but only in fragments. They tell us what goods were counted. They tell us who received rations. They tell us which offerings were prepared. But they do not explain why the kingdom fell. They do not describe the final moments of the palace. They do not reveal what happened to the people who fled its burning halls. As evening settles over the hills of Pylos and shadows stretch across the ancient foundations, the palace remains caught between revelation and mystery. Few Bronze Age sites have yielded so much information, yet so many essential questions remain unresolved. The tablets speak, the ruins endure, and the legends persist. But somewhere between the historical records, the archaeological evidence, and the From the hilltop palace of Pylos, where clay tablets preserved the final whispers of a Bronze Age kingdom on the brink of collapse, our journey now crosses the Atlantic and moves forward through time. We arrive in the heart of ancient Mesoamerica, where an island city once rose from the waters of a vast lake. Here, at the center of one of the most powerful civilizations in the Americas, stood a monument so sacred, so symbolically important, that an entire empire revolved around it. Today, only fragments remain. Yet beneath the modern city that covers its foundations, the Templo Mayor continues to reveal mysteries that challenge our understanding of the Aztec world. The ruins lie in the center of present-day Mexico City. Surrounded by busy streets, towering buildings, and the constant movement of modern life, the ancient stones seem almost out of place. Yet centuries ago, this location was the spiritual heart of Tenochtitlan, the capital of the Aztec Empire. At that time, the landscape looked very different. The city stood upon an island within Lake Texcoco, connected to the mainland by causeways that stretched across the water. White temples gleamed in the sunlight. Canals carried boats through crowded districts. Markets attracted merchants from distant regions. And at the center of everything stood the Templo Mayor. It dominated the skyline. Rising high above the surrounding structures, the temple represented far more than a religious building. It was the symbolic center of the Aztec universe, the place where heaven, earth, and the underworld were believed to intersect. Yet despite decades of excavation, many aspects of the monument remain deeply mysterious. The temple itself was not a single structure. Like many sacred buildings in Mesoamerica, it was repeatedly expanded over time. New layers were constructed atop older ones, gradually increasing its size and complexity. Archaeologists have identified multiple construction phases, each enclosing earlier versions within newer stone shells. This means that the temple preserved its own history. Buried beneath visible layers lie older temples, hidden offerings, and forgotten ceremonial spaces. Every expansion transformed the monument while simultaneously preserving fragments of the past. In many ways, the structure resembles an archaeological puzzle nested within itself. The deeper researchers excavate, the more questions emerge. The most distinctive feature of the Templo Mayor was its dual temple design. At the summit stood two shrines positioned side by side. One was dedicated to Huitzilopochtli, the patron deity associated with the sun, warfare, and the destiny of the Aztec people. The other honored Tlaloc, the god of rain, water, and agricultural fertility. The pairing appears deliberate. Together, the two shrines embodied forces essential to survival: war and agriculture, sun and rain, expansion and sustenance. Life depended upon both. Yet the symbolic meaning may have extended even further. Some researchers suggest the dual structure reflected a broader cosmological vision, expressing balance between complementary forces that shaped the universe itself. If so, the temple was not merely a place of worship. It was a model of the cosmos rendered in stone. The mysteries deepen when considering the enormous number of offerings discovered beneath the structure. Over the decades, archaeologists have uncovered hundreds of caches containing extraordinary objects: shells from distant oceans, precious stones, ceremonial knives, animal remains, coral, gold, sculptures, exotic materials transported from faraway regions. Many offerings appear carefully arranged according to symbolic patterns. Some contain creatures associated with water. Others emphasize themes connected to warfare, fertility, death, or rebirth. Certain deposits are so complex that researchers continue debating their precise meanings. Why were specific objects grouped together? What messages were these offerings intended to convey? Were they gifts to divine powers, representations of sacred myths, or components of ceremonies whose full significance has been lost? the answers remain uncertain. One particularly intriguing discovery involved marine creatures brought from distant coastal environments. The presence of sharks, fish, shells, and coral within the heart of a highland city suggests remarkable logistical effort. Why transport such materials across vast distances? The most widely accepted explanation involves religious symbolism. Water occupied a central role within Aztec cosmology, and marine creatures likely represented powerful spiritual concepts. Yet the scale of these offerings remains striking. The empire invested enormous resources in rituals centered upon the temple. This raises another question. How much of the temple's symbolism have modern researchers truly reconstructed? The Aztecs left written records, but many were destroyed during the upheavals that followed the arrival of Europeans. What survives provides valuable information, yet important gaps remain. As a result, archaeologists often find themselves interpreting symbols whose original meanings may have been far more complex than surviving sources reveal. Then there is the question of sacrifice. Few aspects of the Templo Mayor generate more attention than the evidence for ritual sacrifice associated with certain ceremonies. Historical accounts, archaeological discoveries, and iconographic evidence all indicate that such practices occurred. Yet understanding their role within Aztec society requires moving beyond modern assumptions. For the people who built and used the temple, these rituals were embedded within a larger cosmological framework. The universe itself was understood as requiring continual renewal and balance. Ceremonies performed at the Templo Mayor were believed to help sustain cosmic order. But many details remain debated. How frequently were particular rituals performed? How were they understood by participants? What variations existed across different periods of the empire's history? The archaeological evidence reveals patterns, but not complete explanations. The location of the temple introduces another layer of mystery. According to Aztec tradition, the site of Tenochtitlan was chosen after a prophetic sign appeared. An eagle perched upon a cactus. Whether interpreted literally, symbolically, or as part of a foundational narrative, the story became central to Aztec identity. The temple itself was closely connected to this sacred geography. Some researchers argue that the monument was deliberately designed to represent Coatepec, the mythical mountain associated with important religious traditions involving Huitzilopochtli. In this interpretation, worshippers ascending the temple were symbolically reenacting events from sacred history. The structure functioned simultaneously as architecture and mythology, yet reconstructing these symbolic relationships remains challenging. Much knowledge was transmitted through oral traditions that no longer survive in complete form. As a result, scholars continue piecing together fragments of a worldview that once shaped an empire. The Templo Mayor became even more mysterious after the fall of Tenochtitlan. Following the Spanish conquest in the early 16th century, large portions of the temple were dismantled. Stones from the monument were reused in the construction of colonial buildings. Gradually, the sacred center disappeared beneath a growing city. For centuries, much of the temple remained hidden underground. Its existence was remembered, but its precise form was obscured. Only in the 20th century did major discoveries begin revealing what lay beneath the streets. The rediscovery itself feels almost like an archaeological mystery. Modern workers unexpectedly encountered monumental sculptures and buried structures. Excavations expanded. New finds emerged. Entire sections of the ancient ceremonial center gradually reappeared. And the discoveries have not stopped. Even today, excavations continue producing new artifacts and fresh questions. Every layer reveals evidence that complicates previous assumptions. Every offering challenges researchers to refine their understanding. The site seems determined to keep part of its story hidden. More speculative theories occasionally emerge as well. Some researchers have suggested that astronomical alignments may have played a greater role in the temple's design than currently recognized. Certain architectural orientations appear linked to solar events and ceremonial calendars. Others focus on the possibility that significant portions of the sacred precinct remain buried beneath modern infrastructure, inaccessible to current excavation efforts. If true, important discoveries may still await beneath the city. There are also broader mysteries concerning the intellectual achievements of the Aztec world. The sophistication of their calendrical systems, astronomical observations, symbolic traditions, and urban planning continues to impress researchers. How much knowledge was lost during the destruction of the empire? How many texts disappeared forever? How many religious concepts survive only in fragmented form? The Templo Mayor may preserve clues to answers that are no longer fully recoverable. Standing among the excavated ruins today, it is possible to imagine the temple as it once appeared. Priests ascending steep stairways, ceremonies unfolding before vast crowds, offerings carried toward the summit, the sounds of drums echoing across the city and over the waters of the lake. The monument was more than stone. It was the living center of an entire worldview, and yet much of that worldview remains only partially understood.